Thank you for listening to the Kyle and Tim podcast, where we have authentic conversations that help cultivate a better understanding of ourselves, our guests, and the world we live in. This podcast is about our guests, getting to know them, their backgrounds, experience, thoughts, and ideas. We really appreciate you listening. Before we introduce our next guest, we'd like to introduce you to a few sponsors that help make this podcast possible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Mountain Mule Transportation, located here in Bozeman, Montana. Mountain Mule is a private SUV and truck service, offering chauffeur services in all of southwest Montana. Whether it's your next skiing, hunting, or fishing trip, early morning or late night trips to and from Bozeman Airport, as well as weddings and private parties. No matter the occasion, Mountain Mule will get you there safely and on time. To learn more, visit mountain-mule.com and book today. Today's guest is Coach Bryan Deats, or as a lot of people know him, Coach. Bryan was my first martial arts coach, Jiu-Jitsu coach. I met Bryan probably roughly around 5 years ago when I started training at Montana MMA. Bryan owns and runs Montana MMA. It was a lot of fun sitting down and talking with Bryan. He's always somebody I've looked up to. He's just an inspiring guy, a great guy to be around, and he's taught me a lot about martial arts and just about life and people in general. I think a lot of people that train there feel the same way about Bryan. Enjoy this one. We had a lot of fun. Thanks. All right, let's do this thing.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Bryan, where are you from?
I am from Casper, Wyoming is where I grew up. I was born in Manhattan, Kansas, but was only there for like a year.
So you grew up, spent most of your time in Wyoming?
Yep.
Do you have siblings?
I do. I have one brother. He lives in Washington. He is a therapist out there.
I drove past Casper this summer. What's Casper like? I literally drove right past it on the way to Denver.
Casper is like Great Falls and Billings.
Okay.
Paints a nice picture.
Yeah, well, I would if I want people to know what Casper is like, that's how I would approach that.
What's the population there?
I don't know. It's definitely grown, but I have no idea what it is right now.
What was it like growing up there?
You know, we were pretty lucky where we lived. We moved a lot. Man, I guess it's hard to say. I guess it's just lucky, growing up in the 80s there. Never supervised very much. Did a lot of things probably shouldn't have been doing as far as safety wise, nothing illegal, but, off by ourselves a lot, riding bikes wherever, different neighborhoods, going places, having too much trust for people. But, just school and, started martial arts when I was there growing up. And, I didn't do anything like, I don't know, man. It's windy.
So you had a lot of freedom.
Yeah. I think back then, like one of the things I noticed right now with like between the kids at the gym now and like when I was a kid, like my parents would just kind of let us go do whatever. And if like we were going to a tournament for, whether it was a high school sport or whatever, they'd just be like, yeah, go with those people. Not a second thought. And like now at the gym, I know with the kids will be like, hey, we're going to tournament in Salt Lake. Like, we'll take your kids. And like parents are very apprehensive about letting the coaches take their kids anywhere now. And my parents would have just been like,
see you later.
Yeah. Out the door. So, that's kind of one difference growing up there. And then, Casper at that time, wasn't huge. Once you get into high school and you start driving around, you got to see a little bit bigger side of the city, but, just stayed active and busy all the time.
So you guys are like latchkey kids, right? Isn't that the term?
I'm not sure.
I think that's just like kind of run around and like get home when you get home and your parents are working. What did your parents do?
So my mom was a nurse and my dad was a salesman for Caterpillar. So Wyoming Machinery, he worked there. And so he traveled a lot. My mom worked nights a lot, was on call a lot. So, we'd be alone a lot of the time. I would use it to get out of school a little bit. I would go do video projects and I had like, I think when I was a senior, like 60 excused absence days because I was doing video projects, but I was the only one that knew how to do all the stuff through the high school and you knew how to do the video editing and all the old software that they had. So I would just go out and do video projects every day. I think when you're a senior, like the school really doesn't care what you want to do. They want to be like, oh, like if he's actually interested in working on that stuff, would let them go do it. So,
Right.
so I did a lot of that. Like my English and reading classes and writing classes were good. I really didn't care about math that much. Obviously, history maybe I would care about more now, but the way they would teach it back in the day, it was so stale and boring. It wasn't like, because a good history teacher can make that class exciting.
Sure.
But those are pieces of it.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
How about your parents? What are they like?
So right now, both my parents are going through some, they've both had a bunch of back surgeries lately. So they're going through some of that and just recovering. They just moved from Arizona to Washington, and they are, I haven't even been up there yet. I'm going to go visit in January after the holidays, but they just moved there this year. They were living in Tucson for a while. They were living in Pinedale before that, and then they'd moved a bunch of places in Casper before that. And so they're retired and just they moved closer to my brother, so they can be around my nephew and all that. And now they're just kind of working on their health issues with some of those injuries they've had, and that's it.
What were they like growing up? Were they hard on you, easy on you?
I think it was mixed, because there were times when we were there, able to just kind of do whatever we wanted. I think with like any parents can be strict at certain times, trying to figure out, how to raise kids, especially when, you're there sometimes, not there sometimes. But I think we had a lot of leeway to kind of be able to do what we want. It's old 80s and a different time as far as like people disciplining their kids if they did get in trouble. So, there's always talks about that. We would always, if we were little, you'd get the wooden spoon or belt or whatever. Obviously that wasn't a constant thing. That was if we, maybe did something really bad, but, I know they don't have people do that anymore, but it kind of makes you not screw around when that stuff's happening. So those are all pieces of it, but yeah, right now, just, it's kind of it. Nothing overly there.
Yeah. I don't know what the research is on spoons and spanking. If it's advised or not advised. I don't know if it's a political thing.
I'm sure
if there's science behind it.
I think it's swinging it back to the spoons and to the belts.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, it's a different time, man. The biggest thing right now is parents need to keep their kids off phones. The recent thing I said is like, you're not supposed to give your kids any digital media or phones until they're at least 16. Because of the addiction towards it. I don't know if you've seen some of these videos of like kids going through withdrawals when the parents take the phones away online, and the kids are just freaking out, destroying rooms. They need to. Yeah, there's got to be a lot of research done on that, so parents aren't like, oh yeah, because I remember like specifically, we were in Denver for a training seminar, and like seeing people at restaurants with little babies, and then there's like a tripod with a phone and a cartoons playing, and the kids just staring at that, so the parents don't have to worry about the child. So there's going to be some disconnect between like family members too, because people aren't like actually paying attention to the kid, and the kid's like getting attention from the phone. So the phone at some point is going to be more important to the kid than the parents, because that's who they're spending their time with, is this thing, which I guess is okay because robots are coming. So, it's just all part of the plan.
All part of the plan, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of research on kids. They shouldn't have alcohol and certain drugs while their brain's developing. It's like, I can only imagine what a phone does to your brain while it's developing.
Yeah, well, and that they said in adult males, your brain's not done growing until you're 26. That was just recently came out.
Mine was like 32.
Yeah,
that's like that's the probably the low end of it, the 26.
Maybe that's what they were saying.
Yeah,
I don't think that's when maturity stops. That's just when the brain stops growing.
Yeah. I think mine stopped earlier than that, but my maturity, I wasn't kind of mature until about 32.
I think it's your frontal cortex. That's like your mid 20s to 20s for a guy.
Something like that. Yeah. So if you're getting hit in it, that's always an interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a cop out, but if your kids are just like, if you can just someone can just distract their kids with a phone, then they don't have to deal with them.
Yeah, it's hard, man. Like, I think people have kids and they're not ready for like how much time they're going to have to put into the child, especially if they want to raise a child correctly, how much energy that takes, all that kind of stuff. I see that a lot at the gym. Like, for sure this happens, we'll have kids that love training and come in, but it's hard for the parents to get the kids there, because they have to take the time to get them there, drive them home. And I mean, that's a commitment of time even if they don't do the class and the kid's in class for an hour, you got to figure they have an hour and a half, 2 hours invested into getting their kid to school or to whatever the activity and back. And then that could be tough. So, it's definitely hard. So I could see where like parents are like, all right, I need a break. I'm just going to do this. Right. And if you look, like, there's probably all around more single parents now than there's ever been, percentage wise, I would guess. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, but I mean, okay, so if you're a single parent and you're like, all right, like, I can't afford a babysitter, everything's expensive. I know that's a fact even for couples, like trying to find a babysitter, and they're like, okay, I can't have somebody here to watch my kid, but they'll watch this tablet for half an hour while I clean the house or whatever they need to do. So it's tough, man.
Yeah. Some I guess a recent, I don't know, maybe idea around that I've come to, I guess, pay attention to is that I think people they're expecting kids to like behave like adults, and they're not.
Yeah.
And so it's like the expectation is incorrect, right? And you're like, 100%. Hey, like, this is a kid, right? They're like I mean, if you're under 15 years old, like like I remember I didn't pay attention in school because I wanted to be outside, playing outside. It's not that I was a bad kid. It's not that I had ADHD. I didn't have ADD. It was like, no, I'd rather be outside playing sports. So am I going to pay attention to math? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I have a learning disability? No. I would rather play sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's like one example. But the other one is like their friends over for dinner and they want to have an adult conversation and they want the kids to like sit there silently at the table. Yeah, right, man.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a bad expectation. So I think parents are like over medicating or over compensating. Maybe their overcompensation is with a tablet.
Yeah.
And you're like, just the kid's fine. Leave him alone. He's going to make some noise.
Yeah. You're
not going to have a great detailed conversation with the friends that came to your house.
Yeah.
However, that's part of your family, right?
Yeah.
And so like integrate the disruption into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the expectations that parents have of their kids is definitely an interesting thing, because we'll have, young kids get dropped off at the gym and I'll be like, all right, we got to change our expectations. Like, this is a kid, they're 4 or 5 years old. Their brain is not developed enough to pay attention. Their brain is not developed enough to where they're going to be able to stand in line like a toy soldier and not move around and not be fidgety, So you have to understand that. And like, parents will be like, oh, I see my kid's not standing in line. He's not paying attention. And I'm like, he's a kid. That's normal. Like, we'll work with it. Is he having fun? If he's having fun and he's learning a little bit, we're getting our goals down, but we're not going to be able to teach him at this gym to pay attention and be quiet so that he can go home and pay attention and be quiet when you need them to, if that makes sense. Like, any values have to be carried over at home. Like, we can teach a little bit of values to the kids in the martial arts system and, try to teach them a little bit about respect and discipline and all that through, the same stuff you would learn from a coach in any sport. Like, you're going to learn to respect that coach, be disciplined if you want to be good at the sport, listen to your peers, all that kind of stuff. But you can get that. It doesn't have to be martial arts. If it's a good coach in any sport, you'll learn some of those values. But that has to be carried over at home, and I think it is important for kids, especially teenagers. I saw this thing recently where they were talking about why teens get mad at their parents so much and why there's so much disconnect at that age. So it was talking about how teenagers, when we were cavemen or whatever you want to say we were back then, would need to get upset at the parents so that they would leave that family group to go out so that they would, procreate with a different group of people. So they wouldn't be like having kids with their sisters and all that kind of stuff. So, so it's normal. So that's just a normal thing that we do. And so it's not that the kids are actually mad at you, but, just because
they're like testing their boundaries.
Well, yeah, it's kind of, there's a little bit of testing boundaries going in. And then just through, genetically, we are built to we leave the nest. That's important. So part of that is, when that happens, and as teenagers, they want to leave and go do that. So the expectations that your teens are going to be at home and listen to you and be this perfect child, it's not genetically in our makeup. Like, they want to leave. And if you're trying to control them too much, it's just going to be a fight, because that's what they're meant to do, for survival of the species.
That makes sense. It seems like a reach, and it seems like it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And that was like people just talking about like different science things. I've been following lately, like the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of things on kids psychology. And, it's nice with like one nice thing about the internet, even though we're bashing phones and stuff right now, is like you can listen to lectures on psychology, and you can listen to the best coaches. And I listen to a lot about, how people deal with kids and troubled kids and why kids act the way they do. So I can be, a better coach for the kids and in the kids program and try to spread that. So I've been listening to a lot of that stuff. So it's good that it's out there.
Seems like it'd be a great experience for anyone if they're in the right situation to ever do some kids coaching with you.
Yeah, it's good, man. I'll tell you this, like some of the people at the gym that become the best athletes for themselves and the best competitors are the ones that did the kids classes, because they are forced to work on the basics and understand the basics and make sure the kids are doing it. And that helps make them some of the better athletes at the gym. And then they just get to see it more, and then they get to see kids rolling more. They get to see more problems. And then if a kid has a question that they can't answer, hopefully they're asking me like, what would they do? Or they go back and figure it out themselves. Learning to self-coach is super important. I saw that thing on that recently. I'm an advocate of that, because you only have so much time at the gym with your teammates and athletes and everything else. And you've got to learn to self-coach, self-study. Anything that you really want, you can go out and learn by yourself right now. And then just add it to everything.
You mean in the modern age, you can go out and learn anything?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Like you can get on YouTube and learn so much.
Yeah.
There's a VR. I don't know how real it is. But there's like, they have like a VR surgery simulator now, which I'm guessing is actually what people would use in school. And they just made it a game. So you can like buy it and learn to like somewhat do surgery. So you can learn like a ton of stuff. But obviously they're not going to have that on YouTube. But yeah, I know like, it's, there's a lot out there now.
Yeah.
There was because I was thinking a lot of the surgery will become robotic. Like some of it, like some of the neurosurgery already is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just
is it a robot? Is it AI doing it, or is it people using robotics because the instruments are easier to move and, less shaky?
Yeah. Like that's what like the Neuralink guy that I heard, they essentially use a robot to drill in, like wherever they drill through the skull, and it's so precise and so stable that a human would just be too shaky.
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom's surgery this past year, I guess. Yeah. It wasn't necessarily robotic. I mean, it was somewhat robotic in the sense that like the machine, she had radiation on her brain.
Okay.
And so like they pinpoint the exact location, because obviously they don't want to damage everything around the location.
What was the radiation on her brain from?
She had a tumor.
From cell phone?
No, she had a tumor from kidney cancer.
Okay.
So kidney cancer spread through her body and ultimately created a tumor in her brain.
Okay.
And so they wanted to just go after the tumor.
Okay.
And only the tumor, because you obviously don't want to kill your other healthy brain cells.
Yeah.
And so the machine that they used, it's a laser is what it is. It's a super high powered laser. But they didn't do it with humans because of the human error element. So it seemed to work really, really well on her. So
I'm glad she's doing good then.
She's doing good. Yeah, she's doing good. But yeah, it makes sense. Like, especially with like robotic arms and stuff, like if you can get the technology to basically not make mistakes, it won't make mistakes, or like the percentage of mistakes will be super, super, super low. You obviously have to vet that out. But once you get there, it's kind of like you go to the bank, right? And there's a money counting machine, like a cash money machine. Like the machine basically never makes mistakes.
Yeah.
But if you if I gave you 10 grand and was like, I count this up, you'd be like, hey, there's $9,980 here. And I'm like, no, there's 10 grand there. Yeah. You count it again. You're like, well, there's $9,960 here.
Yeah.
And then you count it again. You're like, okay, now there's $10,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
exactly. Less errors with that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. The robot stuff is interesting. Have you guys seen that the one that they have out in China for catching criminals now, where it's like basically like the robot from the new Star Wars movies. It's just a ball, and it's got like two net shooters off the side of it. So it's just like this big wheel that just like rolls around, and then
and shoots a net
to like catch the people. Yeah.
So they get tangled in the net and then they fall down or whatever.
Yeah. They show it like going upstairs and all this stuff, and they're like, it works well with other robots, and they have like the dog robots and walking by that and all that. And I'm like, man, it's going to be an interesting 10 years here as AI and robotics like kind of come to the forefront of all this technology.
Yeah, no, I have not seen that. That's fucking crazy.
Dude, it's so crazy. All the robot stuff's crazy.
I did the boxing VR.
Oh yeah.
I bet you the surgery one would trip you out though. Like depending on how graphic it is, how good the.
Yeah, I don't think it's human.
So like, hold on, what's
on
the
it.
boxing VR? You put on like a what do they call it? Oculus or whatever?
Yeah, it's legit.
And then you box with somebody. That's fucking cool.
It's super cool. I'm lucky because like in the gym, I'm so busy now, I don't have a lot of time, but like you could go in with the Oculus and like map the entire mat in the gym. And so like you can actually like really move around and like box this character. But
and it knows like where the ring is.
Yeah. I like the sword games. So like I do that in there and just like run around and like sword fight people. It's so awesome.
No way.
Yeah, it's so much fun, man. And just like learn dirty tricks. So
that's cool because I would hate on like jokingly for the most part hate on like I'll say kids or people that play too much video games.
Yeah, that's the thing.
However, like if I was 15 years old and there was like a sword fighting Oculus, I'd be like, fuck yeah, dude, let's do it.
Yeah, that's all I play anymore. Even because like you're standing up, you're doing something, you're being active. So it's not like you're sitting there just like mind boggling on the game. So like there's a bunch of cool like zombie shooter games. I mean, depending on what you like, but yeah, it's pretty fun if you can handle like some stuff you get motion sickness in. But if I do it on the mat and I can like run around and have the whole area, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
They had some mixed reality is what's coming out now. So now it'll put the characters like in your area. So you're like looking through the cameras in the headset and like, then there'll just be guys walking on the mat. And so like you see everything and you see all the people. So it's like the animated characters there. And then you're like fighting them in the room. And then it'll map the walls. And like, so I got a new game that it actually like maps rooms in your house. And then it'll make like this espionage mission that you have to do. So you have to like go through your house, but it's putting like cabinets and there's people in the house trying to kill you and you're like running around. It's like, it's pretty awesome. The technology is coming out with it. Yeah. And it's, we're only like a generation in on these, 2 generations in on these standalone headsets that can do that stuff. And it's pretty cool. So
interesting.
Yeah. I was doing the boxing one in your gym.
Yeah.
We're doing it after kids class. And then I swear I almost sat down. Like when you're in your corner.
What happens when the your opponent punches you?
It'll start vibrating. And
okay.
It'll just get a little.
Yeah, there is a haptic suit.
Shake.
Yeah, there's a haptic suit you can buy for it. So all these companies are coming out with haptic suits, but there's one that has gloves and it has a headband that you wear. So when you get hit, the headband vibrates. And then when you hit them, you'll feel it on your gloves. And then I'm assuming when they hit you, you feel it on the body and stuff like that. So I didn't buy one. I was almost going to, but like it was like some weird process where you had to like, they make them in Korea. So you have to like go find an ATM that you buy a special card from that transfers your money from.
Okay. They're about to steal all your money.
Maybe. No, I think it's legit. I mean, it's because like any of the people that I watch that like review VR stuff, like they have the headsets and all that, but I don't think my money would get stolen, but yeah, I didn't do it. I still might someday. I'm trying to figure out, do I buy a AI grappling robot or that?
Oh yeah. You were talking about that. How do those things look?
They're cool, man. Have you looked into them much?
No.
Okay. So the joints break and reset. So like on the arms, like if you work your arm bar or shoulder lock or whatever, it dislocates and then you reset it. So if you're working heel hooks or any leg locks, like the knee will pop and tear and then you reset it.
Does it scream as well and go, fuck? Ah!
No, I don't know if it does. It has like a lights. So like if you're applying a choke, the lights on the eyes of the robot will change, but I don't know if there's any audio stuff to it, but it's pretty cool. It doesn't actually fight back, but it like lets you know, like if your choke's working, which would be a huge thing. Cause I mean, if you've ever, tried Jiu-Jitsu and you're like, oh, here's this choke. That looks pretty easy. I just do this. And there's like so many details on getting the choke correct, but it has sensors. Like if you're not actually choking it, you're going to have to make the adjustment to get the choke to work. So that's pretty cool. I mean, they're expensive though. So.
Do you know what do they retail at roughly?
I thought they were like $6,000, something like that.
Yeah.
And man, I don't know how many, and most people, if I leave stuff at the gym, the grappling dummies end up just getting broke because people don't take care of it all the time. And like, I couldn't have that like just out for people to use. It would just get busted. It's too much money.
Yeah, it'd be fun, but yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to be like, okay, only coaches or something like that. Because like, yeah, I'll show up some days and things will be busted, and you're just like, and nobody said anything. They'll just be laying on the ground broken, and you're just like, all right, I don't know how this happened, but you just leave them a note.
Security deposit. Everybody's gonna have to leave a security deposit now.
Yeah, that's all part of it. Yeah, it's good though.
All right, let's go back to childhood real quick. So you were a pretty good kid, decent grades. Mom and dad were kind of working nights. Mom was working nights. Dad was traveling a lot. You get along with your brother well growing up?
Sometimes we're very different. So, you know, we didn't do a lot of the same activities together. Sometimes we would, sometimes we wouldn't. But unfortunately, like when you're like the older brother, like we would get into scuffles or whatever. And like, you know, if you don't have any place to put your energy, like sometimes it'll go towards your little brother. So, so you'd get in fights and stuff like that. And then I was, you know, at that time, just, you know, my brother didn't train as much. And so like, it was always like not a fair situation, but it's not like we would
you beat up your brother.
Not, you know, like the shoulder punches and stuff like that. I never like beat him up. Like I've never like would hit him in the face or anything like that, but I probably just, you know, we're just completely different. And like being kids, you don't understand that it's okay if somebody isn't into the things that you are, or like, I was like, oh, he's not doing any sports or whatever, or just like likes to read or do this instead of that. And that's okay. You know, so I just wish, you know, you could always go back and wish you would have had the guidance to be like, yeah, it's okay if people aren't doing the same things you are. Like, here's a different place to like put this extra energy if it is something you have, and all that. I mean, that wouldn't happen a lot, but you know, we'd get along. We still played, you know, we play video games. Yeah, that's one of the nice things about, you know, back to that Oculus headset. Like, I'll play with him and my nephew, and we'll play games together. You know, we play this VR like dungeon crawling game where we're like sword fighting monsters and throwing knives at monsters and doing all this stuff. It's pretty fun, but it's a good way to stay connected. So, yeah, so we kind of did that, but yeah, you know, grew up together, but I don't feel like we did a lot of the same things. So I think some siblings are like, oh, you both played this sport, so that, you know, kept them closer. But I was always off kind of doing my own stuff too. Like I would, early on, I started working at the YMCA. So, probably like when I was even like probably by 9th grade, and I was working with kids, and I was just there constantly, like every day, because I would just be like, all right, I'm going to go do this. I don't want to go sit around at home. I need to go do something. So I did swim lessons, I did t-ball, football, soccer. I did all the kids sports, you know, setting up the fields, all that kind of stuff for years. So, which was good, you know, kept me occupied.
Yeah, that's cool.
Did you have a main sport you played like through high school or anything?
So I was always doing the martial arts stuff, but through high school I did basketball, was the main sport that I did. You know, in retrospect, because back then, like I wish I would have done wrestling. I mean, a lot of us that are doing jiu-jitsu probably wish we would have done wrestling, but my parents didn't wrestle or know anything about it. And unless you're in a wrestling family, it's probably not something you would normally do. And then, you know, as far as like the martial arts side, you would kind of see stuff that you'd see on TV. Maybe you'd see little kickboxing, ISKA stuff on ESPN2 in the middle of the night. So as a child, or in my mind, is like what martial arts is. I never considered grappling as a potential until I was in college and watched the first UFC. But so basketball, and then, you know, did traditional martial arts, and then into kickboxing. Those were kind of the sports I did through high school.
When did you start kickboxing?
So I started traditional martial arts when I was like 8 or 9. And so that was more like a karate style of USTF, ITF style training. And then as I got older, then they kind of move you into more of a kickboxing program where you're actually doing more sparring, and a little bit more realistic stuff, and a little less of the forms, which of the forms that actually are just end up being just shadow boxing. It just really depends on how you look at it, because people can say like, oh, don't do kata, don't do forms, that's a waste of time. But then if you go to all these schools, they're going to be like, all right, we're going to warm up with shadow boxing. And it's like literally kind of the same thing, even though some of the techniques in the forms, what happens is they're a little ridiculous looking with the movements, but some of the movements are supposed to potentially be takedowns or this or that. And that's why they're doing them. And it's like, well, maybe, but some of it is ridiculous for sure. But it is basically just shadow boxing. So you do get a little bit out of it.
I was going to say, is it teaching you any like fundamental techniques that are good to apply.
Yeah, because you would learn to like block or parry and throw a kick, but then there's always in between those some weird movement where you're like, what is this supposed to be? You couldn't figure it out. But there's definitely some, practical things in those as well, where it's like, okay, well, we're going to learn to block and parry and then counter fire or whatever, or throw the combination. So it's fine. It's, as long as you understand what the technique is you are doing within the form, and whether or not that technique has been pressure tested, that's a whole nother thing. You can be like, okay, this is the technique that this is supposed to be for. I'm grabbing this and doing this and flipping the person upside down. It's like, okay, well, that probably isn't going to happen. But has it been a pressure tested technique, or is it just something that, you're looking at? But, that's always tough. And then whether or not the techniques can transition into weapons. So I know that some forms and katas and be like, okay, well, we're learning this because, we could put a knife or a weapon in your hand and it's still applicable. Or, things like that. So.
Did you compete at all in high school?
Yeah. So I did lots of kickboxing tournaments. Won some, lost some. There was never a lot of people in my age group in Wyoming at that time, so I would go up against a lot of adults. So there was no way I was going to win all of those. So just learned and kind of created a style where I had to stay evasive and learn. And people that have trained and sparred with me, like the reason I got like really good at like my side kick and moving off of that, because it was such a long kick and I had to be able to use that to survive when I was originally like kickboxing. But now I have a lot of tools with that and with that strike. So that's been good. But yeah, so it kept me competitive and I always just kind of wanted to get better at anything I did. I always have a lot of grit and determination. And like, if I set out to do something, like I'll get it done, no matter how long it takes. I'll keep my head forward and just keep working. So, and then, did basketball, played varsity as a junior and a senior. And then when I was a senior, I got hurt, unfortunately. Had like a couple injuries. First, when I was a junior, driving to the basket, got kind of, I guess it's not checked, but kind of someone just took my legs out from under me while I was driving up to the basket, and I fell on my hand, and my hand went all the way back. My fingers went all the way back to my forearm. That was fun. So I had all my stuff and tendons and everything here on the inside of my hand are gone. So it's just like a pocket. Anyway, it's a weird thing. So that'll hurt sometimes, but not too bad. But that happened there. And then when I was a senior, similar situation, but I landed and tore my ACL just off of a fall. I think a lot of injuries in basketball are from jumping and being in the air, and then like you're not just like jumping over nothing. There's like all these people around you and feet and legs and like people colliding into you, and you fall and you're like, okay, like, so like halfway through my senior year, blew my ACL. So that was done. So that sucked. But
who's your favorite basketball player growing up?
Growing up, when I was growing up, my favorite team was the Golden State Warriors. So it was like Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullin, that whole group back then. Yeah. Those were the ones I kind of followed, and it was just, they did okay. They weren't the best team in the world, but
that was a good team, though.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Yeah, they were good for a few years.
Yeah, and they did okay for a few years, and then they had Spreewell for a while. I think I was still in high school when he went over to that team, and then once I went to college and I wasn't playing basketball as much anymore, I didn't really like follow the teams that much. And then I think it was like in when was it that they won the title?
Oh, you mean relatively recently?
Yeah. Because and the reason I was following them was like, I was born in 75 and they won the title in 75. And like, I didn't really have a reason to follow any team.
Sure.
And like everybody else at that time is like, oh, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, they're all like following like those premieres. And I was like, anyway, there was no rhyme or reason other than that. But yeah. Then
I would say when they first won it, I guess more recently, it was probably like 2000, I don't know, 14?
Yes.
Something like that.
I think, I can't remember either.
Yeah,
I'd say it was 9 years ago. Would that be right?
Yeah, about.
Yeah, because it was when I was 40. When I turned 40 is the year they won. Okay. So yeah, it seems correct. So yeah, that's who I kind of followed as far as the sports stuff. I didn't watch a lot of other sports. My dad watched Denver all the time. He grew up in Denver, so like, anytime there was Denver football games on, he was watching those on the weekend.
Speaking of basketball, and you were talking about like the fundamentals and being able to like self-coach.
Yeah.
Steph Curry, which may be arguably the best shooter of all time.
Yeah, he sold his soul to the devil, right? To get that. Have you heard that?
No. What?
I don't know. I listen to a bunch of conspiracy theory podcasts, and that's partially a joke, but they say he did. Anyway, but continue.
To get to be a good shooter?
As good a shooter as he is. There's all this crazy stuff. Okay. Anyway, go ahead.
I don't know anything about that. You
should look it up. It's fun.
Okay.
I don't believe that stuff, but dude, it's more entertaining than what's on TV. So just check it out.
I think he probably just shot a lot to get really good at it. But that would be my guess, is that he's been shooting a lot. But what he does is he starts like 1 foot away from the basket.
Yeah.
And so he warms up 1 foot, and he'll take multiple shots, like right there, right?
Yep.
And then he backs up like 1 foot. And so now he's 2 feet away, and he shoots a bunch. And so he like always starts with like the fundamentals really easy, really close. And backs up. This is like every single day. And then he'll back up, then he backs up. And so he starts with that, and like he talks about like self-coaching.
Yeah.
But like he's basically, what he's doing is he's gaining his confidence.
Yep.
So he won't generally, I'm not saying he doesn't like go take a three from half court or whatever.
Yeah.
But when he warms up before a game, he goes through the same routine and starts really, really basic.
Yeah.
And then backs up.
That's cool.
So it's just kind of like, well, that's probably a pretty good thing to do just in life, you know?
Yeah.
Because we kind of get complacent of like, oh, I know how to do that. Let me just start over here.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Jump to the end. Yep. Yeah. Everybody does that for sure.
You're talking to the fundamental technique master here.
Yeah.
You got to build the basics and then jump to the other stuff. The other stuff's fun and all that. You know, on the martial arts side of it's a little bit different, because like the fancy stuff that we learn in sport jiu-jitsu is great, but that is limited to athletic ability. So if we're trying to be, you know, depends on what you're trying to coach for, right? And everybody's got like different goals and different things. But, you know, one of my Grandmaster Flavio, one of my coaches, was always like talking about responsibility and being a responsible coach is to make sure people are at least seeing real self-defense that doesn't necessarily rely on a huge amount of athleticism, even though that's an important part for being able to defend yourself. If you are not in shape, you cannot defend yourself, period. So you're not going to be able to do these moves and just be able to walk away. There's no magic to it. And you also have to train self-defense.
You mean if you can't move your body properly?
Yeah, man. There's no like secret technique that's going to help you escape someone that's bigger and stronger and physically more athletic than you, other than knowing where you're at and being aware and not going to stupid places, you know, just having that sense of awareness. But yeah, super, super important with that stuff. But, you know, fundamentals that you can potentially use no matter your age and the situation to survive a situation. Self-defense isn't made to win. That's the other thing. People are like, oh, self-defense is winning. I'm going to beat this guy up. And it's like, no, you're just trying to survive. You know, real self-defense is like, hopefully we can teach you stuff where somebody doesn't kill you if you do end up in an altercation.
There's getting into martial arts later as an adult, there's definitely a perception. If you learn these techniques, you'll kind of have this invincible power.
Yeah.
Like that's just how it's portrayed in media and movies.
Oh,
and
for sure.
Until you're in it, then you're very humbled by the realities of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I've trained for a long time, and man, you get, you know, and even so, wrestling is a martial art in the sense of it's learning self-defense, and we might not have thought that years ago, but the more that, you know, training comes about and you watch actual MMA fighting, wrestling is like super important, and it is like an American martial art. And I would say like, you know, boxing and wrestling are like the top, like if there are American martial arts that were like perfected in America, and like that together makes a dangerous MMA fighter. There's a lot of MMA fighters at their bases are, you know, wrestling and boxing, and they're some of the best guys in the world, and they just learn to defend everything else.
Like Bo Nickel.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, so you got to be able to do everything, and you can be at the gym, and then anytime like young athletic kids come in and start grappling, like even having more knowledge than somebody that's bigger and stronger and faster than you, man, it's work. It's hard, you know, even if you've been training for a long time. So yeah, there's no shortcuts. But going back to the fundamentals and the, you know, the foundations of everything, you know, again, you're just kind of learning to survive those situations and not necessarily win. And, you know, I'd like to tell people not to get, no, don't get tricked into a one-time self-defense course. There's no like, you're not going to go to like, oh, I'm going to go do this self-defense course. I'm going to be okay for the rest of my life. I mean, that's nonsense. I hate it when people sell it like that. We had the hardest time like doing self-defense courses. We would do them for free and stuff, but then like people would like just come once, and I'd be like, man, you're not going to be able to perform this. Like you would never
It's like anything.
Yeah,
like if you were a good shooter in high school, but you haven't shot a basketball in 30 years, you're not going to be good today.
No, exactly. And if you've only
you're not going to make a single shot.
Yeah, and if you've only done something once, it's so weird, people's perceptions, and a lot of people just, I don't know what it is with the human ego that thinks that everyone thinks like, oh, I'm just going to be able to win this fight no matter what. Like in their mind, they're always victorious, even in that situation. I think people do that even when they lose or something in life or something doesn't go their way. They try to spin it so that it is going their direction, and which is, I guess that's healthy. I don't know,
or maybe. Delusional.
I don't know what maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so you got out of high school.
Yep.
And give us the next handful of years. What are you doing? What's going on? Where are you at?
You know what I was going to say too before I forgot when you were saying your conspiracy theories that you listen to?
Yeah.
Shout out to my buddy Brendan. If he's listening, he's
also a conspiracy theorist.
He said him and his buddies, they meet in like a different buddy's garage once a week. And they all drink and talk about conspiracy theories. He's like, it's the most fun you'll ever have in your life.
Dude, it probably is fun.
That probably is fun. Why don't you guys go do a podcast with one of them drinking one night?
Yeah, that'd
be cool.
We were in his garage.
We would get immediately taken off of YouTube.
No, we'd be fine.
So I do Mysterious Universe. Like that's the one I listen to, that podcast, if it's okay to punch things in here. But they do they do conspiracy theories and other stuff. They do like good stories too that are not as out there. They did a whole thing on, because they read books and like cover them. They did a whole thing on fentanyl, which was awesome. I learned a bunch on like how that gets into the country and like how we're not able to stop it and all this other stuff. They did another book on this lady whose job was to test security systems.
So some
businesses.
of the stuff is actually real.
Yeah, okay. It's real. And some of it's like, and then they'll go into UFOs and Bigfoots and all that. And I think the stuff that's more interesting is the real stuff. And they did one on the guy.
What's it called again?
Mysterious Universe.
Oh yeah.
They did one on a guy, the first split personality guy what's the movie that came out recently? I think the movie was actually called Split, where the guy had all the split personalities, and that character was based on this first person, and like they did that guy's whole story. Man, it's super interesting, the things they talk about. And
some of those. It's throwback to me, myself, and Irene.
Yeah, those guys' recent movie came out. I didn't see it because it's on MGM Plus.
Have you heard of the conspiracies?
Yes,
I guess. Well,
no, go ahead.
I guess it's a conspiracy, but it's also there's some truth to it about the missing people and the crazies.
Yeah, so the 411 cases.
411.
Yeah, so the missing 411 cases. So yeah, they actually talk about those, not specifically the crazy mountain ones, but they talk about them and that they happen all over. So, but a couple of people at our gym went hiking there. I know Gage. I don't think Marnik was with him. I think it was like Gage and Braden. They went up there and like they were hearing weird sounds and weird stuff was going on. Justin Higginbottom had another story where he went up there and they were seeing lights and all this stuff. And like, like people that go hiking up there come back with weird stories, man. Yeah.
Well, there's the people who went missing.
Yeah.
And they're like, dude, where did they go? Like, because I guess, in the crazies, like, mountain range isn't very big. You can basically walk out from anywhere.
Yeah.
And they're like, they found this person's shoes. They found their shoes in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
They found their backpack and they found it. They're like, they never found the person. You're like, why did they take this stuff off? Where did they go that they didn't have their shoes with them?
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's just, that's like, there's like the whole conspiracy that it's like ancient Indian, spirits. And then anyway, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's kind of fun. Yeah. Not fun for the people who actually are still missing, but.
Well, hiking can be dangerous. One of the gentlemen that trains at our gym, he does some stuff, some federal government police work. I don't even know how I want to say it. But
I asked him if he could do the podcast.
Like he's a U.S. Marshal or something?
Couldn't do the podcast because there's so much stuff he couldn't even say.
Yeah,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, and dude, there are crazy people in the mountains that are serial killers, and like you got to be careful when you're out hiking, man. You can't screw around. Like, we have big talks. Like I wasn't carrying for a while. I just got pistols recently so that I can carry them when I go hike, because I kind of was like, I've got a lot of people that rely on me as far as like the people at the gym just to kind of keep that going. I'm mostly concerned with that, trying to keep a good facility in place for them. But it's like I don't want anything to happen to me, man. I don't want to be out there either, whether it's bears or whatever. But yeah, when people are just like flat out disappearing, that's kind of weird. It's like, was that person by themselves? Were they with somebody else? Did anybody know where they were going? And just trying to communicate with people on that. But yeah, man, weird stuff can happen. And there's crazy people out there. Yeah. We're very naive to what actually is going on until you talk to the police officers that work in town, the sheriff people that work in town, the federal people that work the stuff that's going on.
Because if you're not hearing it, you're not around it, you just don't think it's happening, but there's stuff happening.
And there's peace of mind to that, and you want to feel safe and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, the government wants us to feel safe, even if crazy stuff is happening. That's part of what they're doing, so there's not panic. But man, you should probably, if you're hiking, be carrying a weapon and learn to shoot and be safe with it. Because there's nothing else out there that's going to help you. Like, you're not pepper spray sometimes work, but there's plenty of stories of people like getting attacked from bears when they had pepper spray or whatever. But got to worry about people too.
It's funny you say that because Chris Coddington says that. He's like, when I carry in the woods, and he's a gun nut, and he's like, it's for people. He's like, that's the main reason I carry when I'm in the woods. He's like, I have it. He's like, I have my bear gun, but he's like, it's like the people are the thing I'm most worried about.
Yeah, man.
And to be honest, I thought he was like being a little over the outlandish about it, but
dude, like our friend, if you've talked to him about stories, and sometimes I'm sure he says stuff that maybe isn't supposed to be told, but he has to vent because you can't keep all of that stuff in without expressing it somehow. And I'm sure there's things that he can't say, and he's pretty good about it. So maybe the stuff he does say is okay, which is going to be like public stuff anyway. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you just don't read those reports and just don't know how common it is, and what can happen. So you can't walk around living in fear all the time. And the way to do that is to have confidence in yourself and, be strong, be correct, let people know where you are, know who you're hiking with, go with friends, all that kind of stuff. And, but yeah, I'll have to look more into the specifics on the crazy mountains and see what the history is of it before, modern people started disappearing and what they think is there. But there's stories all over the world of that. So it's like, is it connected or is it not connected? Because there's like, Dogman stories, Skinwalker stories, all this stuff. And you're just like, and now you're starting to see videos. You've seen videos for years and they're always garbage, but now there's like AI videos and you're just like, is this real? Is this not real? Like, you can't even know now.
Yeah. Anyway, so we went down a little, I took us down a tangent on the crazies. Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's good.
And that podcast you said, Mysterious Universe.
Yeah.
You said there was one you paid for. Is it that one or is it a different one?
Yeah. So that's the only one. So they have a free portion and then they have like a paid portion where they do more stories. So I do the paid portion as well, just because it's super entertaining and it's easy to put on in the background while I'm working or doing other stuff. And I guess, it's a fun listen. So
I've been meaning to look it up because I've heard you talk about it. But it sounds interesting.
When you guys go do the podcast with the guys and the conspiracy theories, I'll go sit in the garage and talk conspiracy theories with everybody. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
How do we get on this? You asked him a question.
No, because he just said conspiracy theories. And I was saying, my buddy Brendan, it's like, once a week we discuss.
Okay, yeah.
Can we test him? And because he's probably listening though. I'd be like, I want someone to put their phone out and just see if they make you cover the microphone and the cameras and see how conspiracy they are. But now they're going to know. So
he'd let it go.
I've seen people that have their phones like that though, that believe in weird things.
They have their phone doing what?
That's taped over. Cameras are taped over. All that stuff, and they try to carry old phones and don't want anybody hearing or listening to them. So,
got it.
Yeah, sometimes depending on the people you run into.
Yeah.
I drove a client to West Yellowstone last year, and she was freaking out because there were cell towers right near her hotel. She's like, that 5G, I cannot stay here. I'm like, oh, lady, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just driving you to your hotel. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
and there could be. I don't know. I'm sure there's something to cell phones, and I don't know.
Yeah, the 5G conspiracy. Yeah, that was interesting when that came out because they said it was going to be used to manipulate people and it's bad for your brains, and I'm sure it is. We're getting more. We'll know, especially with this generation that grows up with it. Like, I didn't have it until, there wasn't even internet until I was graduating college, you know what I mean? And it was dial up. So,
yeah.
And, so now it's a different time, when these kids grow up with that hitting their body and brains for their entire life, it's going to change things. But.
Right. When's your birthday?
September.
Okay. So what date?
17th.
Okay, so you're going to be 50 next year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so everyone from Montana MMA and Bryan's large circle, remember that. We got to do something special.
Big conspiracy theory party.
Yeah,
you got to get dressed up as your favorite conspiracy. That would be a joke.
Kyle, you were asking him something before.
No, so I was asking like, what were you doing after high school? So you graduated high school.
Yeah. So I got into film school at MSU, and did the first year college thing, meeting a bunch of people, getting exposed to a bunch of different things. And again, going back to what I was just saying, there's zero internet at that time. Like we're still watching VHS videos.
It's like 95, 93.
Yeah. I mean, there's, nothing out
right?
there.
Like those are the years you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 94 and 98. Yeah.
Okay.
And then, always meeting a bunch of different people, trying to figure out like who you actually are, because you're not controlled by the system so much, and you have a little bit more freedom. And back in the days when there was still Best Buy, we'd go rent movies, and then that's where I saw like the first UFC video. I was like, oh, what's this? I've never seen this. It says real martial arts fighting. Let's watch it. And then I was like, holy I haven't seen any of this stuff. I hadn't considered grappling as a form of martial arts because you're just not exposed to it. So as soon as I saw that first thing, I mean, I must have watched that first thing like hundreds of times, because that was all that was out there. So I could jump online and watch a bunch of MMA fights, and I was like hooked on trying to learn more of the grappling and more of what was real. You know what I mean? As far as like the martial arts side, because there's so much in life that isn't real. But one thing with fighting is like it's real. Somebody won. There's no questions. There's no questions what happened. There's no way to sway it or lie about it. This is like, as pure as something can be without being tainted back then. Because, there was less rules and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, this is what really works. This is what doesn't work. And so that took me on a path to kind of try to learn some more grappling and learn more styles of striking. So that was part of that happened then.
When did formally your jiu-jitsu career start?
So what we would do is we would go and travel. So I'd have a small group of friends, and even then we would go and just try to travel and learn from whoever we could. And I put signs up all over campus, like going looking for people that want to train MMA and jiu-jitsu and wrestling and all this. And then like I had a buddy that could draw, and like he drew some weird stuff and like people getting choked and all this. I wish I still had those flyers, just cheesy flyers. And we like posted them all over campus, like trying to find people to train with. Like I was like, I'm going to find people that know some stuff. And then, we met some guys that did some judo. And then I tried a bunch of different, martial arts in town, but they weren't it. They weren't like real at that point. I was like, okay, yeah, I understand. Like this isn't what I'm looking for. So we trained with some judo guys that were really good. And then, just constantly traveling. We'd go to Idaho and train with people, go to Utah and train with people, and then slowly meeting a circle, and then just getting together and being like, okay, this is what we're going to work on today, and trying to figure stuff out as a small group, because there was nothing there and there was nobody there with any knowledge. So it was an interesting time, because even in that first 4 years of MMA is when like, the one politician was calling it human cockfighting, and all the other martial arts systems were really looking down bad on MMA. And if you were doing MMA, you're scumbag, dirtbag, blah, blah, blah. Not a real martial artist, all these different
because
things.
You needed to stick to one type or one discipline.
No, I think it was just because it was actual fighting, and it was making the stuff that doesn't work. It was exposing a lot of things was part of it, and people like would see fighting and just be like, oh my God, it's just so brutal and barbaric, and it's hard. And I'm not saying it's not, like it is brutal. Like actual MMA fighting is hard. And like the sport is, I mean, that's a whole nother subject, but anyway, we'll come back to that. But so we were going over the time where a lot of people didn't want to do it, or didn't want to have, anything to do with it. We ended up starting a club on campus
because it wasn't popular in society.
Yeah.
And it wasn't accepted.
Yeah, it wasn't accepted. Like you wouldn't, like back then you couldn't have, like if you had an MMA gym, like no parents are taking their kids to an MMA gym.
Right. Like
they'd be like, no way, man.
Yeah.
I think it's with anything too, people can abuse it or use it correctly as well. So you could take that information and teach kids to beat other kids up, or you could use it to teach them to defend themselves and be good kids and, build self-esteem and all those kind of things. So you want to do the right things with it. So yeah, we just train with everybody. We just get together, and like I already had some kickboxing knowledge, so we just get together and spar and fight and grapple. And it was not what we were doing now at the gym. Like when, it wasn't like overly rough, but when we first started, it was like, okay, well, we're going to spar and fight every night. If you're new, I guess you're fighting us tonight. Like this is what we're doing, because we didn't have anyone to lead us correctly and put us down the right path and make sure we're doing it safe. So
it was a full-on fight club.
pretty much. But we had posters up. We talked about it.
I mean,
but that's how you got to start. I mean, because there's no, like I said, there was nobody in Montana and there's no communication. You try to find books or video instructionals or anything you could to learn from. And but that's how it begins. That goes back to that self-learning where it's like, hey, I want this. It's not here. I have to do it. I have to make it happen. Like nobody else is doing it. You know what I mean? So I have to do it because everybody else is like, well, we want this, but it's like, well, who's going to step up and like put this together and make this happen? So that's,
it was almost, I think it sounded like people like looked at it as kind of trashy or like scummy. Like, I don't know what Rogan would say is when he started commentating, he was like in Hollywood and people are like, why are you doing that, man? Like all those, like those guys are cage fighting and like,
yeah. And then now
like, what's wrong with you?
Now all those guys bought it.
Yeah.
Whatever company that all those guys invest in Hollywood, that's the company that bought the UFC for billions of dollars, and they're still paying the fighters trash. So yeah, it's interesting how things swing like that. Yeah, I mean, people did not look fondly upon it. Somebody sent people up to watch us train because we had our club at the university to make sure, because they were lying about what we were doing up there and saying we were leaving blood all over the mats and people were getting hurt and all this, and nobody was. I mean, we were still training pretty safe, but so like they had somebody up from the university come and watch us for like months every time we would train, just to make sure we weren't doing what this person said we were doing.
Because you were using a school facility.
Yeah. But people, that's why I said the perception was wrong, and they were trying to like throw us under the bus and be like, this is what we heard MMA is. And they'd never been to one of our classes, and they're just like, oh, here's what these people are doing. And it was nothing, like what people thought it was. So that was an interesting time. There was a point in time where MSU had probably 10,000 square feet of tatamis upstairs in a room where the tennis courts were, just completely open. It was amazing. And then they sold them, got rid of them. And
what's a tatami?
So tatami is like a mat that's like a square mat. So it's similar, like texture and foam on the inside to like a traditional Japanese tatami mat they might have at home, but it's more of a grappling style mat. But like it was like having like that much square footage is amazing. It was like basically 2 tennis courts size, just full of mats, and there's like so much space, and it was pretty cool. So there'd be all the martial arts clubs at that time would use that space, and everybody would have their kind of area. So it'd be pretty fun.
Cool.
Are they doing anything on campus now or no?
I'm not sure. I think there's definitely a taekwondo club on campus because one of our coaches, Carl, goes to that. I don't think there's a jiu-jitsu club on campus anymore. There was for a little bit, but that was a hard thing to maintain, I think. There's a wrestling club on campus, and those guys meet at a couple different places. But I don't know what else there is right now. So we got quite a few college kids coming to our spots.
Okay, so you were, kind of breaking into that world for those handful of years.
Yep.
You were still going to film school.
Yep.
So you graduated with film school or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Graduated with a degree in film.
Okay.
We did, film school was awesome. It was a good time to be there. It was right on the cusp of like film going away and people using more digital media. So everything we did,
like actual film.
Yep. So we learned to like splice film, edit film. We shot on film. Like even my senior projects, and we shot on film, and they were expensive because shooting on film was costly. And
if you made mistakes, it was on film.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Literally.
And you can't redo it because it's like, it costs too much money to reshoot a scene and get it where you want, because you don't have video where you can just kind of keep redoing it. So yeah, I did a lot of stuff with that, did a lot of like screenwriting things and won some screenplay competitions. I was probably in like, I think 15 film festivals with my short films, which is really good. Most people don't get that. So that was good. And it was just good to be around creative people all wanting to do something cool and have fun. I really miss that. I mean, if I could do anything else other than what I'm doing right now, if I could be around like creative people doing video and film content and shooting cool stories, I would definitely do that. But that's again, a difficult thing to balance in Montana and have people do that with the weather and everything else, and just to have time. What it comes down to right now is time. Like the gym's pretty much full time for me, and then I have my other side project, the wing sauce stuff that I do with that, which is on top of that. So
cool
with that. That's what I got going with those.
Okay, so you graduate, and what do the next handful of years look like?
So graduated college. I met Jane my senior year of college. And then
Jane is your wife?
Yep.
Okay.
And so when I graduated, she was still in school. She still had a couple years of school left. And all my friends kind of, they went to different places to try different things. I had some friends move to LA and all that. And I went out and visited LA, but it just wasn't the fit for me. And then so I was just going to hang out while Jane was finishing school. So continued to train, kind of set up a space in my garage to train with people that wanted to train. And then I was working a night shift at a group home for kids, for troubled kids. So I'd work like 11 p.m. to 9 a.m. so that I could still try to do things during the day and figure out where I wanted to go. So after a short time, we had a bunch of people.
Sorry, let's dive into that. It seems interesting.
Yeah.
So you work nights
Yep.
so that you had like a bunch of time during the day to do other things.
Yeah.
So it's like an efficiency thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a good job for that. And it was good to kind of give back and work with the troubled kids and some of that stuff too. So, but yeah, working nights allowed me to, try to accomplish other things. And what ended up happening is, so, we had a group of people that were training, over those 4 years on campus. And then some people started taking fights. And then we, after a lot of us graduated, we were kind of training in my garage, and then we rented. Sports and Courts used to be in the building down on Haggerty, down in like 205 Haggerty down that way. And it was like a big, like basically, fitness center.
Where was this? Right.
The one down here, like the big building, whose wedding reception did we have there? Christian? No, not. Was it Christian's wedding?
I don't know.
Anyway, just down the road. So
okay.
But that whole building, there's a bunch of offices in there now.
Okay.
But
it's probably down on like frontage. Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's right down the road.
On Haggerty.
Yeah.
And it's like offices now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like back up in the way. It's like kind of connected to that Doll Cemetery building. There's like a little road that used to connect them. Anyway, we rented a space up there for a while. It was like 1,000 square feet maybe.
Just friends.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like it wasn't necessarily a gym.
No, we weren't trying to have it be a gym. I mean, it was kind of, and then we were trying to get students in there so that we could afford the rent.
Okay.
But that was still on the time where it was just kind of like trying to grow the gym and get people in. And it was still in the time where like MMA was like not as accepted. But, we had some people starting to take fights in some odd places at that time. And that's kind of what I did for those couple of years, is trying to get that going and keeping that up. And I was trying to find time to write. I wanted to continue to do that, but that I didn't really put time into that as much as I did in the martial arts stuff. So it's kind of where it ended up. And there, so we traveled a bunch, did a bunch of interesting fight shows. We went, we did the first fight show in Montana. We didn't put it on, but a gentleman in Kalispell put it on. So we went to that. I mean, there was like things happening in that fight card that aren't legal now. Like we had, there's only ended up being like 4 or 5 fights on that card, but one of our guys was like going for an arm bar, and like the guy's like kneeing him in the spine, like while he's going for the arm bar, like stuff that you can't hit somebody there right now, like different stuff. And like even the knowledge of like how to compete and tactics wasn't where it is now. So, but that was a pretty small show. So we went to a couple of the very first MMA fights, traveled to Canada for fights, some people fighting. Yeah. Just all
and
over.
You were competing in these at the same time?
I was not competing. After I did kickboxing in high school, I was just coaching and training, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was like, I don't know if I wanted to do that. And so I was just coaching and like training and sparring with those guys and fighting with those guys to get them ready. And that's just kind of the role that I fell into on that. And I always try to be over prepared for things, sometimes probably too much. So it'd be one of those things where like, even then I was like, man, I don't know if I have the knowledge to do this right now. I don't even know at what point I had the knowledge where I was like, oh yeah, now I have the knowledge where I'd be okay fight. You know what I mean? I don't know where the answer for that is. So I just didn't feel that I knew enough at that time. And some of the guys still wanted to fight. And it's like, okay, well, we'll get you ready with the knowledge we have. But, and everybody did well. One of my fighters, Alex Schonauer, he was on the first Ultimate Fighter season. So he fought with me and trained with me. And I think he was 7-0 or 8-0 before he got on the first season of the Ultimate Fighter. yeah, so that's kind of the role I just kind of fell into. And then it's just trying to keep the gym open. I was the one trying to like pay the bills and do this and
the one over here at Haggerty.
Yeah. And so like I was like, all my time was like spent on that as well. So and then I didn't really have at that point for like MMA and jiu-jitsu like I didn't have the coach to like motivate me to help me compete in that aspect of the sport, because there wasn't as many people around. So like I try to do that for everybody now, is one, make sure that they're prepped correctly. Now I can understand when somebody's ready to fight and make sure that they get the right opponents and matchups, and then also motivate them to do grappling tournaments and do the things that are going to be good for them if they want to compete. Because competition is not for everybody. There's a lot of great coaches that did zero competition. But the kickboxing competitions that I did when I was younger, this helped me understand a lot of things for that. And even then just being like, okay, what does it take to be ready? And, what level is someone trying to go to with this? Kind of what happened with those. And then we jump around from buildings to buildings and slowly get bigger and slowly, get more people that wanted to train. And as MMA became more popular and more people would move to town that had some training or knew some stuff, and, we'd get with everybody we could and learn from whoever we could. And then just kind of create a community where everybody can grow together and try to learn. So kind of started from that.
It's interesting. It started like real grassroots out of like necessity. Like it had to start that way.
Yeah. Cause there was nothing.
Yeah.
And then, along that path is when, a promoter in Butte wanted to do a fight. And then like, I was the only one that knew all the fighters and had been to a bunch of fight shows and all that. So they contacted me, and then that got me into starting to learn to promote events. And I've like promoted over 100 fight shows. I don't do it anymore because it's very taxing and super busy. I mean, it would take so much time. And that was the other reason, is like, once I started promoting, there was zero time to like focus on what you would need to do to fight. You know what I mean? You'd have to spend so much time prepping to fight. And it's like, you can't have 3 jobs and put the time in that you need with some of that stuff. But, you just kind of go from there and spar and fight with the guys at the gym and go from there.
Cool.
I think I already asked you this, but when did you start training jiu-jitsu formally? Was that somewhere along?
I don't even know what you would call formally. So 94 through like 2000 was kind of informal, just training with whoever we could and learning from whoever we could. Around 99, 2000, I think, is when Grandmaster Flavio first started traveling through, and we trained with him and did seminars with him and went to places he was training, and he would spend weeks in Montana traveling and coaching, and then we would go into some of those affiliate schools and train with those people. And I guess that would be the most the more formal side of it. I don't think like we really got super, and we were doing jiu-jitsu at many places, but I don't think we started taking the gym seriously until we moved into the building that we're at now. As far as myself going, okay, like I'm just going to try to run the gym as a business so I don't have to work this night job anymore.
When was that? What year was that?
Man, I don't even remember now. When we bought that, it's been a bit. So that's probably been, I was trying to think who first started there. I don't even remember, man. It's been 10 years. So
okay.
At least, I don't keep track of time that well with that stuff. I'm just kind of like on my path, and like time's just, I don't know why I don't keep track of it like that. But yeah, we've been there for a while. So that's when we started like really taking it seriously as a business and being like, okay, let's turn this into something. MMA was becoming more popular and more accepted. So when it wasn't accepted and jiu-jitsu was just kind of a niche thing, it was definitely harder to turn it into a full school.
Got it.
Is that when you started training kids? Was when you moved into the?
No, we were doing kids at some of the other buildings we were at, because there were always like, some parents that wanted their kids to learn jiu-jitsu, and it was usually like parents that followed MMA or were already doing jiu-jitsu themselves. So they'd want their kids in there to try to learn it. So we always had like a small kids program, nothing like we have now, where we're just kind of like focused. Like now we have, 100 some kids in the program. But it, it was good to learn how to teach the kids what they needed to know. And, I just kind of got to get it started. And then we had like some small programs like in Three Forks where we'd go out and help some kids out there. We did that for like a year. It was just hard to make the travel all the time, but there was no martial arts out there. So any of the kids that wanted to do martial arts were kind of doing that small program. And then, as you're trying to get bigger and bigger spaces, you're like, all right, we need a kids program so we can, pay rent and all that kind of stuff. And like the gym wasn't making money, because until, I don't know, 6 years ago, maybe, is when the gym was actually making money. And then that's when I was able to start like paying coaches and all that kind of stuff. So, I wanted to get to a point where I was doing that, but, learning how to get students into the gym and run classes and have enough coaches to do all the things that we want to do and have all the programs we want to have, that just took time.
Is there anyone you credit all your, all your skills with kids too?
Oh man, I don't know. I think it's just a accumulation of everything I've done. When I was, like I said, when I was in high school, I started like kids sports then. Like, so, when I was in 9th grade, I'm, helping with t-ball and soccer and doing swim lessons and doing that all through high school. And then, I worked at the movie theater when I was in college. And then obviously after college, I went to the group home. So, and I did that for a long time. So, and we had tons of training on how to deal with kids and all that kind of stuff there as well. But even more troubled kids and, harder kids. And so just, I think just a continuation of always working with kids. Like, I've probably spent more time working with kids than most parents spend with their own kids at this point. You can say I've done it for, 30 plus years of working with kids almost every single day. So I've seen lots of different personalities, lots of different situations. And then
you got a wooden spoon in your back pocket.
Yeah. No. Just here we go. All right. Your parents dropped you off. You got to fight now, kid.
And Brian's always wearing a belt.
No, I was just learning to like, communicate with the kids, and yeah, it's just something that, and then through that whole process, I've learned to work with kids, I guess. And then, as we talked about earlier, adults are really just grown up children also. So, just learning to work with people and, learning to be patient, be kind. And then you just got to like study, like if you want to be like good at working with kids, like got to study that stuff. And like I said, I've been the last year or two, just like really focusing on like kids psychology, especially with like, we're talking about all the phone stuff and like how kids are different now than they used to be. And just to help kids because a lot of times parents are taking their kids to the gym because they want to get them away from the phones and all that stuff. And they want something healthy for them, but the kids don't always want to do it. So it's like, okay, how do we motivate those kids? How do we get them like excited about this? And so just not really a single person, man. I think just the working with the kids thing was just like accumulation of doing it, right? Just over and over and over again, just that being the job. So
yeah, I've said to a handful of people, I've learned more from you about working with kids than anyone in my life. And it's honestly the last place I thought you'd ever learn that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad that we can help. So when there's a bunch of little Tims running around.
Yeah, it's just it opens your eyes to see 50 different kids.
Oh yeah,
on several different days, and then there's a lot of nuance to it.
Yeah. It's hard, and it's good. It's rewarding. Mike Kendall, who has been helping a lot at the gym lately, he's going to start helping with kids classes. I know you guys had talked to him here, but I was telling him that I'm like, one of the most fulfilling things is, one of your athletes, winning something, but like, it's good when like, certain athletes win, MMA fights, athletes win, jiu-jitsu tournaments, but like a kid winning their first like grappling match is like pretty awesome. If you've helped coach that kid, like that's a super, super cool feeling. Cause like how hard that is. And like their parents don't even know how hard grappling is, most of them, cause they don't do it. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, my kid goes into this and they do jiu-jitsu. And it's like, okay, your kid just won a jiu-jitsu match. You don't know how hard that is to do. Right. So that's pretty awesome. So that's what kind of keeps me doing it is, it's like, okay, I like to see the kids succeed and get better. And we get some really cool kids. So then you get to know them and you're like, oh, okay. Like, I don't even know. It's almost like a big brothers, big sisters kind of situation, which is some of the stuff you're involved with. Right.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, oh yeah, you really like these kids and you really want to see them succeed in whatever they're doing. And hopefully you can teach them some things, even if they don't do martial arts forever. I'll be like, okay, we're going to work hard. And like these lessons can carry over into whatever else they want to do.
Yeah. I love being around the gym anyway. So it was kind of a no brainer.
Yeah.
Do the coaching. Like it's, I stopped working to go do the coaching, but I enjoy it. It's very rewarding. So I get where you're coming from.
Completely. It's super cool. Yeah. We got some kids that, maybe you could just tell like, okay, maybe they don't have a bunch of friends at school or like, because we'll talk and have bully talks. And like some of the kids are like, oh yeah, he's like, I get bullied a lot and blah, blah, blah. But they love coming to the gym because they have friends there, and we make sure that
pretty soon they're going to be doing the bullying.
No, But one of our big things is like teaching other kids to be kind to other kids. Like that's a huge thing for me. It's like, I just want the kids to learn to be kind. Like I said earlier, like, you know, if we can have classes where people are just learning to have empathy for each other and be kind to each other, that would be great, because that's really missing in society. I know have you seen some of that stuff where they talk about what you should be learning at school instead of what we do learn, where they're like, you need to learn to do your taxes. You need to learn how to invest money.
Yeah.
You need to learn how to like have a job. And it's like, why aren't we teaching these things? And like, why aren't we having like classes on empathy and just being kind to people? And it's hard because like some sides of the business world are like, you've got to be a shark and a wolf and like step on people to get to the top. And it's like, yeah, I think you can do it without having to be so brutal. You know, if it's a competitive thing, that's one thing, but you don't have to be like a jerk to people in real life.
Right.
You know, but just teaching people like how to deal with their stress as well would be a good thing. So I'm just hoping that all the kids at the gym can leave, you know, better people. Like if we can make them kinder and understand other kids more and like learn, you know, how to socially interact with each other better and deal with their anger and deal with losing. They're going to lose. They're going to get smashed in jiu-jitsu. You're not going to show up and it's going to be all, I win everything. There's no trials. You know what I mean? Like it's hard. You're going to get smashed. You're going to have days where you're like, this sucks. Somebody is crushing my face and I didn't like it. And it's like, okay, well, are you going to come back or not? You know, so we got to really work on motivating kids for that, because it's hard. You know, you don't win all the time, and it can be discomforting for sure. But if you don't learn to do that in life, when life gets hard, you're going to quit. You know, you're going to be like, oh yeah, life's hard. Oh, I'm going to stop doing that. That was too hard. Oh, I'm going to give up on that because it's too hard. You know, you're not going to be good at anything you want to do right away, usually. So you're going to have to work to get good at it. And like, you know, if people have kids, whatever sport they're in, like really try to get them to follow through with it. Right. Who was it? Yeah. Anyway, there's one, I know, baseball player that ended up being like, you know, all-star, that whole kind of thing. I don't follow baseball that much, but he was trying to quit, but his mom wouldn't let him quit. And she's like, you're going to baseball. You're going. And she would never let him quit. Yeah. And now he's like, yeah, thank God she didn't let me stop, because now I'm one of the greatest players of this generation or whatever. So I think it's important that parents like try to get their kids to finish through and not let their kid be like, yeah, I don't want to do it. And it's like, well, your parents don't want to go work out. They don't want to go do this. Yeah. And it's like, you know, where's the balance on that? But I think kids just, man, it's hard, but you gotta keep them motivated into something. If they don't like a certain sport, at least get them doing something else that they have to push themselves, that they're going to lose at, so they can deal with losing. Right. Yeah.
I think there's like, it's hard when you're a kid or even a parent, right, to think like in 2 years, things are going to be different. Meaning it's going to take 2 years to like get a little better. And so you might get your ass kicked for 2 years, you know, but 2 years later, you're like, you'll be pretty good.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I just remember that growing up of like, I grew up I played soccer, and I played soccer with like the same group of people.
Yeah.
And I kind of went like this, right? Yep. So like there were years that I was better. And then there was years that I was not like a good player on the team. And then 2-3 years later, I'm at the top of that team again, or that league or whatever. And so you kind of go like this.
And there's a graph for that in sports, actually. So that's a pretty normal thing. And what happens is you have a certain techniques that you're good at. And if you're working on new things, so let's say somebody introduces new techniques into your game, or like even into soccer, like new footwork or whatever it is, your level is going to drop while you're learning those new attributes, or you're getting stronger or whatever it is. So in martial arts, it's definitely like that. You'd be like, oh, I'm not good at guard passing. So maybe you're here and you're just playing guard the whole time, and you'd be like, oh, I need to work my guard passing. So then your game's going to drop down while you're working on that. And then once the guard passing gets better, then you're going to rise to the top again. And then you're going to start working on something else new. And if you're actually working those things and exploring, then it's going to dip again, and then you're going to come back up. Well, but each time it's not like a straight, but it like goes like this. You know, like,
and at the same time, you're going, as you're a kid, you're going through growth spurts, right? Yeah, so all of a sudden,
stuff, and
all of a sudden you're a tall kid, and then 2 years later you're short, and then 2 years later somebody's way stronger than you.
Yep.
Right, and then 2 years later you're strong again, right? Or compared to that group of people, and then you go play a different city, right, where players you've never played against.
Yep.
And now they know a technique that you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're like, I've never seen that before. They just kicked our ass.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about that too, as kids are growing, like biomechanically, like their step is different every single day as they're growing. So like to teach them footwork and distance and all this stuff, like it's hard because like every day it's different. And it's like, if you have a big growth spurt and then you're like, you used to be able to run fine. And now you're like, body's trying to relearn how to do everything. So it makes the sports even harder at times.
There was a rule that got changed in like soccer across the world. But nobody really knew about it. And it was like 2002 where you could do this. Well, it started happening. Teams started doing it in Europe.
Yeah.
But nobody knew how to do this in the US. Never been done before, basically. And I remember being in a soccer tournament and this team did this because their coach knew.
Yeah.
And it was basically like what we thought was like a trick play. We're like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was actually allowed. And so it was like, we just lost the game because somebody knew one piece of information that we thought was illegal. Nope, not illegal. Great. Game over. We lost. And it was like, okay, now we had to learn that, right? Now that we had to learn how to defend it because other teams were going to do it also. And all of a sudden within the next 12 months, it was happening all over the soccer field across the whole country.
That's cool.
And so it's just one thing, we didn't know and we got our ass kicked.
Speaking of trick plays, that reminded me of something. So one of my coaches, when I was in high school playing basketball, had designed a trick play, and we never used it. Like when I was a sophomore, I think. But when I was a senior, the junior team used the play, and then the kid that did part of the play, like he ended up going on Jay Leno and all this stuff, and he was one of my friends back in the day. But so it was an interesting play. So the play was, towards the end of the game, down points or whatever. So the kid, and the video is probably out there somewhere because, like I said, it made a bunch of headline news. So he drops.
Who did he play for?
Casper. So Natrona County was who he played for. So he drops to his knees, starts barking like a dog because the ball's out of play. They're getting ready to throw it in. So the play goes, they're getting ready to throw it in. He drops to his knees, starts barking like a dog. Everybody turns and looks at him. It's like, what is this kid doing? Everybody on the court. And then they just distracted everyone. And then they just like pass the ball to the guy under the basket. Boop, put it in, win the game with like seconds left. Yeah. So that's out there on video. Without, another trick play for you to look up.
So it's kind of like hiding the shortstop, hiding the ball in his glove, acting like he threw it back to the pitcher. No, you're out.
Yep.
Like as soon as the guy steps off the bag.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting times.
Yeah. Anyway.
Oh, Brian, I was just thinking when you were saying like they teach everyone to be sharks and wolves.
Yeah.
Like the nice thing about martial arts and jiu-jitsu is you can teach someone how to be in competition, win that competition, win or lose, and do it in a very sportsman.
Yeah, humane. Man. Well, exactly. I mean, we've seen this. There'll be coaches after matches that'll shake your hand and shake your opponent's hand and shake your students' hands. And there's coaches that'll just like get up and walk away because your student beat them. And it's like, you can teach people how to win and lose with like dignity and grace, and then just learn to come back better and stronger. I mean, that's how the human race got to where it is. And we just got to keep on pressing.
Usually guys are like hugging after jiu-jitsu matches because they both just went through hell together. So they're like, yeah, man, I get it. Like,
yeah, exactly. It's an experience, like until you've like trained with somebody on that level, it's hard to understand it.
Yeah. The coaches, like some of the coaches can be the problem.
Sometimes,
the students are fine. They're all just,
and everybody wants to win. I get that. I like, everybody's got competitive and they want to win, but it's like how you approach that and like what you're saying to, like we'll go to tournaments in Salt Lake and like there's two white belts going together and some coach is like, break his fucking arm, break his arm. And I'm like, dude, like these guys probably got to work tomorrow. I was like, how about you just be like, can he just get the arm bar and win? Like, does he really have to break it?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you're, like crazy stuff. And like people, like even with kids, man, I can tell you like the amount of pressure put on kids by some parents and some coaches is insane. And it's like, parents got to realize during competition that you're not the one competing. Your kid is. You should just tell them. The only thing you should tell them is that I love seeing you do what you like doing. That's it. Don't put any pressure on them outside of that. Obviously, you want them to do well. But if you're projecting your own inadequacies and your own like desires of what you want out of them onto them, they're not going to like it. They're going to end up stopping. So you want to make sure that they're staying happy and, push them when they need pushed, but not, not in a negative way. I see that sometimes for sure. I've seen that since I saw, during T-ball when I was doing that, parents like get in fights because of a T-ball game. It's like, come on, like these are just kids and we're not teaching them the correct way to deal with sports. Sports in America is definitely interesting. People get riled up for sure. It's like, okay, well, go do the sport yourself.
I think kids sports brings out the worst in parents.
Oh man, it's crazy.
I guess sometimes it brings out the best, but generally the worst.
Yeah. Well, and I think like, that's why I said like parents, if you want your kids to be good at a sport, you should be doing that sport also. So if your kid wants to be good at basketball, you should be on a pickup league somewhere. You should be learning to play. You should be studying it also so that you understand everything they're going through, right? If you want your kids to be great at anything, the kids that are best at sports, like I think you can, in general, like a lot of the times, their parents were also doing that sport and also great in that sport. So it probably made it a little bit easier to coach them and guide them correctly.
I should wait for Kyle to get back because Kyle always makes fun of me because I quote Carl Jung. But he's got a quote like, the biggest burden put on a child is the unlived life of the parent.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that.
Like,
yeah, that's
what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the situations where it's like, okay, just let your kid be their kid, and you don't need to push them so much into a negative format. And just like yelling at your kid at tournaments, like I've seen like the craziest things where you're just like, holy smokes, like I've seen like kids lose at tournaments and parents like grab their kid by the arm, super aggressive, freaking drag them to the side to go like start yelling at him and talking at him. I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like, it's like you almost want to say something. It's one of those lines where they're not hitting their kid in public. So you're not going to be like, all right, like I'm going to jump in and actually say something. But it's like, you're just like, man, that's super aggressive. Your kid just lost a grappling match and didn't win. So who cares, man? Especially with grappling matches, it's so like the sandbagging and like the levels of everybody are so different. There'll be college wrestlers in the white belt division in jiu-jitsu tournaments against other white belt male adults that have maybe been training for 6 months. And it's the same thing with kids. You'll get kids that have been wrestling for 7 years in the white belt jiu-jitsu division because they're a white belt in this, and their parents are just like, I don't know. It's crazy.
You mean there's a bunch of people that are completely different levels?
Oh, for sure.
That are all being bunched together.
And they're all considered like, oh, we're all white belts. We're all this belt. We're all that belt. But even then, like, there's been posts recently, I'm sure you've seen them, where these like this Olympic champion girl is competing at blue belt. She's an Olympic medalist. You know what I mean? Like competing at blue belt is ridiculous. She's going to smash all those girls on Applicability and just all that mat time. Wrestling is jiu-jitsu, without the submissions, and there's some different wrestling sets. And one of the things Grandmaster would always say is like, wrestling is, I can't remember exactly how he was saying it at this moment, but anyway, but when you do jiu-jitsu, you end up wrestling, right? It's a consequence of it, right? Is what he would say. That wrestling is a consequence of jiu-jitsu, but, so wrestling, again, being self-defense is important and, has its own aspects to it. But yeah, if you get a kid that's wrestled a bunch and then he's going against, other white belt kids that have maybe been doing jiu-jitsu, 2 hours a week for 6 months, this is going to be, you're going to tell.
Bryan, what do you think is the most interesting or unexpected or important thing you've learned from coaching kids?
That I've learned from coaching kids. Obviously, I mean, we talk about patience a lot, but being calm. I think the expectation thing is like, what do you expect these kids to do? Because don't they say like you only remember so many names?
Yeah, you have like a kind of a tipping point. It's like 50 to 100 or something.
Yeah, man. So like, when I worked at the group home, I was usually just there by myself. And then people would show up like while the kids were getting up, and like it would be different people every day. So I'm like, I don't remember the people I worked with. And I would like go to stuff. I'm like, I don't remember any of this. I get hit in the head and names fly out.
Yeah.
When we were doing like a ton of fight shows, like people will come up to me all the time because they know me from like because we did so many fight shows for years from like 2006 until COVID's really when I stopped doing a bunch. Dude, I did, a fight show every month, and like all these people know me from that in that fight community and circuit. And like people come up and say hello, and I'm like, dude, I do not remember who you are, and I don't know I didn't even know how to approach that. I'd always just be like, hey, how you doing? I don't know if it'd be better just to be like, hey, I don't remember you. Can you remind me your name? Like I meet so many people. And
yeah,
that's a hard one.
The other day I was with my girlfriend and she's like, there's a woman sitting behind me. She's like, I cannot remember her name. She's like, when she comes up, do you mind just introducing yourself and asking her name? I did.
Yeah, that's a good trick.
It went perfect.
That's what I do. I have to, like, it's hard because we get so many people and be like, with the kids, if I, like, when they're new and I can't remember their name, I'll be like, can you remind me how to pronounce your name correctly? Because I don't think I'm saying it right.
John?
Yeah, and you're like, okay. I was saying.
Oh, I thought it was Jahone.
I was like, oh, man. It's hard. But they're still, they give you a weird look, but it's like, how do
Tom?
It's like,
I thought it was Tom.
How do I do this as a layup? I don't know. Anyway, what were we talking about? So
the question I asked you, what you've learned from kids or
from kids or surprised me?
Or is important?
I think, you have to learn to be patient with kids, and everybody's got, different things going on and coming from different households and different things. I don't know if anything has surprised me too much. I think kids are capable of a lot. Trying to keep them safe is important, all that, and just learning to talk to them and learning to process with them. Learning that, like we were saying, like kids want to play, they want to have fun. I guess what would surprise me is like, everybody's got a different attitude towards losing and how they handle it. So, some kids will get super upset if they're not winning or they're losing. I'm like, I'd be surprised like how upset these kids were getting and how they were handling it. But I just use that as an opportunity to hopefully teach them to not get that angry when things aren't going their way. But there's just so much to it. I don't really have a direct answer with that because I've just been working for them for so long. So it's not like my first year of working with kids every day, I saw this, but it's just been like a slow build up. So it's all kind of integrated in there, I guess.
We just did a podcast recently with my mother, and she said something pretty funny. She said, I remember like I'd be mad at one of my kids or something, or one of you guys was speaking to me, and she's like, something you guys were doing, and then I realized you guys were just mirroring things that I do.
Oh yeah.
Like, so it's part of her personality that we're expressing. I made me think when the parents are freaking out about the kids losing. And
and
those are the kids that maybe handle losing terrible too.
Yeah. And almost all of our parents have been really good, partially because I try to talk with them before we go to a tournament. And I'm like, here's the expectations. Here's how we need to, talk with the kids between wins and losses. And your kid's going to cry. Almost every kid cries at a tournament because it's hard and shocking. Again, if the parents haven't done it, they don't know it. And if they've never been to a wrestling tournament or jiu-jitsu tournament, and it looks like some other little kids out there, like just going after their kid, like you just don't know.
Yeah, so you're like prepping the parents.
Yeah, man, they need to be prepped for that. They got to be ready.
Brian, do you say this? You think this is a jiu-jitsu tournament for kids, but it's actually a parenting tournament for parents? We're going to see who handles this the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely part of it. Like some parents won't go. They're just like, yeah, I don't want to go watch and all that, and then like the dad will come or the mom won't go or vice versa. It's interesting. But I think that, parents can probably use, I've been trying to post more and share more on like coaches that put stuff out for parents on like the gym Instagram and stuff like that, where I'm like, oh, that's a good thing for parents to know. So I'll put up like these little like sport quotes and all that kind of stuff. And like parents should be studying, kids psychology and kids sports psychology. And like, if they can't do the sports, let's say you can't do the sport that your kid's doing, study sports psychology and like, what are the best things you can do to help your kid outside of, just watching them, because we don't get trained to be parents. We just think like, just because you can have kids doesn't mean you're a good parent naturally. Just because you can make a baby doesn't mean you know how to raise a kid. I know there's some cultures where the whole community helps raise the kids and the family and the parents that have been there and all that kind of stuff. But if you're trying to do it by yourself and you're just making up your own rules because it's your kid, it's like, man, maybe, go out and study a little bit and get some advice from some other people and, listen to some suggestions from some others and see what kind of fits into like, your view of what this should be. But everything that we do, you have to get a driver's license. You have to learn to drive a car and take tests and study. And like we go to school so that we can learn how to, have a job. I don't want to get into that, but we go to school for various reasons. But it was initially we went to school so that we could learn to sit down and have a job and listen to our boss. But that's part of it. We learned other things socially there. And it's like being a parent. You need to study, you need to learn, and you need to constantly do that through the whole time that you're being a parent, and probably help you. It'll probably take away some stress because you're like, oh, other parents, suffer this, and other parents deal with the same situation, and this is why it's happening. It's not just me. That'll probably relieve some stuff. But yeah, just go out and do that.
You're reminding me of, like, I look back now. I remember like this changed significantly when I went to college, but even in college there were parents that were doing this, but like, the parents have never played the sport.
Yeah.
And they think they know how to play the game. And so they're yelling out in the field, telling their son or daughter, like, good job or not a good job. But they don't know what a good job or not a good job is.
Yeah.
Because they've never played the sport. And so they're like contradicting what the coach is saying in some ways.
Yep.
And I think there's so many interesting, I would imagine, in mixed martial arts that like 99% of the parents have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
So they're not qualified to give their child advice.
Exactly.
And so that's just interesting, because I can imagine that mixed martial arts would even be way worse, because most parents have played softball, baseball, soccer, maybe basketball. They know a little bit about the sport, right? But they haven't played in 20 years.
Yeah.
So they're not any good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where they could like study, be like, okay, well, what can you help your kid with if you don't do the sport?
Right.
Well, get them on a good diet, figure out a strength and conditioning plan, right? And
or let them be coached. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. Yeah, let them be coached. Learn what you can about it, help them get to practice, help motivate them, help them when they've struggled at practice, and relate it to a struggle you've had at work. You know what I mean? Be like, oh yeah, well, I had a hard day, work, this happened, just like you had a hard day there, but I'm going to, pick it back up and go at it again.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that for sure.
We had a coach when we were growing up that he wouldn't let the parents on the field. So he'd come to practice and there was a fence. Just naturally, there was like a fence between the basketball courts and the soccer field. And so I was like, no. Parents, you guys are behind the fence and you can't speak to the players at all.
Yeah.
You can't say a word.
Yeah.
And he's like, if the parents would say something, he would be like, no. Do not talk to the players. They're here because I'm their coach. You're paying me to coach your kids. Do not coach them.
Oh, yeah.
And like some parents would hate that. And other parents were like, this guy's legit. Like he's actually a real coach he's trying to coach our kids because he's an expert at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would have that at some points in some of the gyms where like parents would come and watch, and then their kid would be, like I said, their 4-year-old's not standing in line. So and it would only happen once. And they would go on the mat, grab their kid and like pull them in line and be like telling their kid, you got to stand here and be like this. And it's like, one, your kid is not a reflection of you. What your kid does, if he's not paying attention, I don't think you're a bad parent because of that, because he's a 4-year-old kid. He's like having fun. You know what I mean?
He's a 4-year-old.
If your 4-year-old starts spouting Eminem lyrics, then I'm going to worry about what you're doing at home. But I'm not going to be like, if he's not standing in line, I'm not worried about it. But yeah, so we tell the parents they can be out, they can kind of watch, but like in the little kid room, like we don't even have a spot for them to watch, because like it's just better, because then the kids are just looking at their parents too. And their anxiety's up. You know what I mean? Like if your parents
do something wrong?
Yeah. And then you're just like all worried, what's going to be said. I prefer that the parents don't even so if you're you need the kid's sport experience to be 100% positive. So let's say your kid spilled cereal on his way to school and didn't clean it up, and there's a mess at the house and you're mad about it. But when you're picking him up and you're taking him to basketball, football, soccer, whatever it is, don't bring that up yet. Okay. We're getting picked up from school. We've been at school. It's already probably been a hard day. Talk to them about their school. Keep it positive. Take them to their sport or their physical activity in a positive manner. Pick them up. On the way home, be positive. Okay. When you get home, okay, now we're home. Let's talk about this that just happened. You don't want to create
like the right context.
Yeah, you don't want to create anxiety going to and from a sport because you're mad at them about something else.
And they're going to relate it to the sport.
Yeah, then they don't want to go.
It has nothing to do with.
It's like if I'm arguing with my parents every time they pick me up about something, and we're arguing until we get to the gym, am I going to want to go to the gym? No. Whether it's about the sport or it's about something else that went on at home or not, just chill out for a little bit. You know, kids been at school all day. Just if make sports a positive experience, they're going to do better. Because then they're going to go, okay, every time I go to sports, my conversation with my parents aren't about negative things. It's all positive. You know, we have this little 15, 30-minute interaction that's positive. I get to say whatever I want, be a kid, go in, same way until I get home. Now, once I get home, if something else had happened, then we have a sit down and we do that. But, you know, keeping those times, you know, healthy would be good, and not, you know, don't give your kid the phone in the car while you're driving. Like, try to have some conversations with your kid and talk to them about their day. And there's ways to, because a lot of kids won't want to talk, but again, if parents get online, there are different ways you can try to pull stories out of your kids, or you can tell them stories to get them talking, which will be just healthy for your, you know, parent relationship with your child. So yeah,
I have that experience a lot because I'll drive families up to Big Sky.
Yeah.
And sometimes the parents are like, "Oh, we got to download enough movies. There's not going to be service."
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes they'll talk to the kids the whole way, and you know, kids they're hilarious.
Yeah, that's
like
cool.
The things they say and the things they're
yeah.
pointing to, and then the parents are playing games with the kids, ryming words.
Oh, that's good.
And they're like, it's a night and day difference. Some kids like, "Oh, I got to download this on the iPad before we get into the canyon."
But
Tim, just real quick, while I'm thinking about this before I forget.
Yeah.
So why aren't you doing a podcast in your car while you're driving these parents and families to see if it's something they'd be interested in?
I thought about this years ago. I just didn't I've literally thought about that. I said, man, it'd be cool to do it with a bunch of different passengers, and then like the best podcast of the week, they get their trip is comped.
Well, what if you because you were talking about what if you were trying to get more people, and like you're being like, hey, like what if you just set up a separate company, so it's not even your main company, and it's like podcast ride to Big Sky, where like if you want to get on and like chat about what you do and just a little story,
like that old taxi show.
Yeah,
he would quiz you and
which taxi show? The HBO late night show?
No. No, I don't know about that one.
Sure.
There was like what was that guy's name? He was like a comedian.
Yeah.
And he would you get in a minivan and there was all the kind of lights, and so like he would ask you 5 questions on the way. It was in New York City.
Okay.
It was like 5 questions on the way to your stop, and if you answered the first one right, you got, you know, a quarter of your ride comped, and then if you got all of them right, then you got all your stuff comped, and you got $100.
Well, that would be fun too. Like if you can make your ride something other than just a ride to Big Sky, where it's like, okay, like we have this, or even if you had multiple things like that, that's not a terrible idea. Where it's like, okay, we have a podcast where we ask you questions, you tell us about your business. We have a ride where we give you like, you know, Trivial Pursuit questions along the way to see if you know the answers. Things like that. This is an interesting way to make it so the ride's not like super boring, and they could choose. And you can be like, you can have the ride with Tim with his shirt off ride. You know, whatever.
You got to pay 3 times for that.
Whichever one would be best. Anyway, just some ideas.
That's a cool idea, man.
You get
quizzing people. Hey, you get $25 off. You get this question right.
Yeah, or whatever. And then you might get a bigger tip because they're just having fun.
What year was, you know, like the Battle of Little Bighorn or something like that?
But the podcast thing would be interesting if it's like certain families that, you know, would want that on there to like show interactions maybe. I don't know. I mean, you have to, it'd be tricky with some of that stuff, but it'd be an interesting idea. Taxi Cab Confessions is what the HBO show is called. And I think it was like people like picking people up late at night in Vegas, like drunk people and all that. It's probably all fixed, but yeah, it was a similar thing.
Those are good thoughts, though. I'm working to expand the company, so these are good thoughts. Good things to talk about.
But you were talking about having like a positive experience, and I remember growing up playing soccer, like something changed with my dad, where like he stopped probably being so critical of us, because he would. I mean, we took the sport very seriously.
Yeah,
and even when we were 12 and 13 years old, like we took the sport pretty seriously. We were playing club soccer. It was, you paid, like it cost money to play. It wasn't just like, I mean, I guess AYSO probably cost money too, but it was expensive. Like he was paying for high quality training and being on a team. And I would say, 85% of the time we were having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But there was 15% of the time where it was like more serious than it was fun.
Yeah.
And so there were a few years, and I think my brothers would probably say the same thing. And I had the benefit of being the youngest. So my dad learned these things with my older brothers.
Yeah.
So by the time I was like, it's probably like 14 or 15, my dad stopped criticizing when I would have a bad game, or he would do it actually a productive way.
Yeah.
And so I actually got a lot better because I was enjoying it more.
Yeah, that's good.
And so like I got a lot better at the sport at like 14, 15 years old because that anxiety or stress of like, oh, my dad's gonna be mad at me. I didn't play well, or I made a mistake. I didn't get chewed out on the ride home.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it was like, my dad's like, yeah, man, you screwed up with that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know. End of conversation. Instead of I wasn't getting berated for an hour on the ride home.
Exactly.
And I think it made a big improvement in my game because I just enjoyed it more.
Yeah. 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 And that's good. And I think like, again, with more information being out there, like parents, if your kids are going to do sports, like learn how to be a good sport parent. And there's a lot of good people to follow that have good advice out there, and just figure that out. It's one of the things we need to do.
Yeah.
I got another question for you, Bryan, about like kind of kids and adults and egos. I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know if there's really an answer, but like, how do you think you maintain a healthy or slightly balanced ego throughout a martial arts career?
I think, at the beginning it's tough. So like a healthy, balanced ego, you have to have. So if you're competing a lot and you want to be a high level competitor, and most high level competitors do have an ego and they have a belief in themselves that comes from that ego, and you have to have that to excel at a high level. I think that's important. So I think there's not maybe not a balance of ego, but like, how do you show your ego? Like, are you flaunting your ability kind of thing? Are you a jerk to people? Are you not kind to people because you're so good at something and they're going to listen to whatever you say because you are so good at it, versus, hey, I'm great at this, but I'm also going to be kind to people, because I think ego is important, I think that helps you not give up, to be like, I'm better than this, I'm going to keep going. But how I guess for you, what do you think is a bad example of ego? I guess one bad example might be like somebody that, in a jiu-jitsu sense, will like hold on to submission too long and hurt somebody because they need to prove a point because they thought that person was spazzing out too much, versus like, okay, I'm just going to be relaxed and beat this person and doing that. There's people that'll roll super hard and jump on submission super fast instead of flow rolling, and that's a whole nother thing. But sometimes those are the guys that are super competitive, and they just need to learn when not to be competitive like that with other people they're training with. As far as balancing how you, I don't think your ego needs to be balanced again. I think you need to learn how to balance how you project your ego and how you're training with different people. Would that be better?
Yeah, I guess, well, this is what I noticed in myself is like, maybe getting very humble, getting my ass kicked all the time, get a little bit better, still humbled a lot. And then you get to a certain point and you start to beat people more often. Then I'm like, oh, I'm kind of the shit.
Yeah.
And then some people come along and show you're not the shit.
Yeah.
And then I'll notice it in some coaches and just people I train with. Some people can lose really well. Some people's like can be very high ranked and seem terrible at it. So
as far as like how they
handle it. Yeah, just the way they handle being wrong or losing. And
that's tough, man. And if you're trying to, there's always going to be somebody that's bigger, better, stronger than you. And like, if you're, doing a mix of stuff is good. Like, it was very good to have, Kevin Ross moved to the area recently and is coaching at our gym, and he's one of the best Muay Thai guys ever. And it was, super good for me to, spar a little bit with somebody that's just such a high level to like, just put me in balance. You know what I mean? Because as far as like the stand-up side of the game for the people that come into the gym, I'm always doing very well against them because I've been doing it for so long. And then that's where you can like just get this like, high horse on yourself about like, oh, I'm doing well. So it's actually, and I obviously I don't have an attitude with it when I do it or anything like that, but it was nice to have somebody come in that's even a higher level than me, that's more, specific in one sport that's super good. And to be able to spar with something like that, like for me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome, because now I get to like push myself and I have another goal to reach as far as like where I want to go. So I kind of like that. I see what you're saying there. So I think, but anyway, that's what I'm saying. There's always going to be somebody that's going to come by that's going to be bigger, stronger, faster, whatever. And as you get older, it changes too. Like when you're younger, you can do more things. And as you get older, you got to slow it down to keep your body healthy. So I'm at the point now where I had a really bad back injury. I had a car wreck, which led into all these other things where we got T-boned, and it just ran into a line of consequences and injuries and other things that kept happening. And I'm just on the verge of getting over that last part of that. But I'm spending as much time now doing mobility and trying to physically keep my body able to train and do martial arts as I do doing the specific training. So that changes. I mean, everybody's ego is going to get hit by that at some point. Like everybody at some point is going to be like, all right, I need to focus less on the training and the rolling and this, and I'm going to have to spend just as much time on physically keeping my body healthy and doing mobility and doing these things is going to allow you to play a little bit. You're not going to be able to do as much as you were. So, I think that happens with time. And the more you get in and just keeping an open mind and just, realizing you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. And that's why competing is important. I want so we'll have MMA guys that they'll take some MMA fights, they'll get some wins, but you never really know the quality of the people that they're fighting. Sometimes they're definitely tough. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, that guy maybe shouldn't even been fighting at all. And you just never know when you get into a matchup. But if you go to a jiu-jitsu tournament, you're always going to fight guys that are training, and there's going to be some guys that are tough. So I think it's important that our MMA athletes go to jiu-jitsu tournaments and take some L's, man. Like, because if you got some guys that are big and strong, they're athletic, and they're kind of beating everybody in the gym. And because MMA, you don't have to expose yourself as much to like submissions and things like that, because you can just hold positions and hit somebody. And it's like, okay, well, you need to expose yourself to losing. So that one, you need to keep working to get better, and you're not the man. You know what I mean? You are good, right? You could be great. But you've got to like do these things, take some L's so that you understand like, okay, you still got to learn, you still got to get better. You still got to learn to be competitive. That's important. I see it a lot in MMA. Like you'll see guys, take fights and they're like, okay, well, you fought 2 or 3 fights, but those guys have never won a fight. And even though you beat 3 guys, they've never won a fight. So what does that mean? So like get out and test yourself and other things and start taking those tougher fights at the right time. I mean, that's just part of the MMA world with amateurs. They'll let anybody fight. There's no proof that you have to have trained, so I make sure our guys now, like they have to do grappling tournaments before they fight. Like I'm not going to put anybody in there without, them going through that. And I'm like, if you're not winning a white belt jiu-jitsu tournament, should you really be getting an MMA fight? Like people get hurt, man. Orbitals get broke, arms get broke. Like we've had serious injuries come through, with people fighting. It's like, man, I've seen a ton of stuff. I mean, it's not a game, and like people think they can just fight and it's going to be okay. I'm just going to get up the next day and go do this. And it's like, 75% of that happens where it's just like, okay, I had a fight, not a big deal, a couple bruises and scratches. But that other 25%, concussions, broken jaws, surgeries and things that are going to happen to you, they're going to affect you pain wise the rest of your life. You got to be careful, man. So I try to take my time and making sure. And if I can get somebody, honestly, that will just do jiu-jitsu tournaments and they're like, oh yeah, jiu-jitsu is enough, I don't need to fight. Like, I think I'll just do jiu-jitsu for the competitive side of this, and it also depends on what you want to do with the rest of your life. But, brain trauma is a real thing. So
I was going to say, that's me right there. I do not want to.
Yeah.
Brain trauma, and jiu-jitsu is enough for me.
Yeah. And it's like, you can learn to do stand-up sparring safely with partners and not take a bunch of headshots. Because you do take headshots in jiu-jitsu. Don't, if you get thrown and land on your head, you're going to get a concussion. If someone's swinging for an arm bar and you drop your body weight, dude, I've been kneed in the head so hard in grappling on accident. You know what I mean? Or someone goes for a move and they kick you in the face, or the person next to you, because the mat size falls on you or whatever. Like there's still like chances, but yeah, if you're actually fighting and taking full shots to the head, there's consequences to that. They're figuring out more and more things about how to deal with concussions, but man, you've got to really want to do it. And so like, if I can get some of the students, if jiu-jitsu is enough and jiu-jitsu competition is enough for you to feel good about, where you're going with your martial arts, that's probably where you need to be. Now, if you have that little beast and demon inside of you, that's like, that isn't enough, and the only thing that's going to satisfy this guy is actual fighting, then yeah, we'll get you ready and prepared for that also. But I want to make sure you have that guy inside of you, and that you're willing to give up all these other things for that. And that's why, like, are you going to be at the gym every night instead of going out to the bar? Are you going to do this instead of hanging out with your friends? Like, you've got to like prove that you really want it. And those are the people that won't get hurt. People that are getting hurt sometimes, right? Even like professionals get badly injured on occasion, right? Because it's you're fighting other professionals that are high level, but there's no reason amateurs should get hurt if people are and their coaches are watching out for them to make sure that they're ready to go,
At a minimum, they know how to protect themselves and
Yeah. And it's the whole MMA sport is tough. We got to get referees that are well trained, so they're stopping fights on time and all that kind of stuff. And it's difficult. So, but we do a good job of making sure people are ready. We got 3 people fighting in Idaho this weekend, so I'll leave tomorrow with them.
Cool.
Go get that set up.
Yeah, I'd ask that. I guess I just think like something I've like coined in my head all the time now. As I say, like I got to remember to do the emotional and mental jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Like just as far as like character and ego.
Yeah.
There was someone that like I won't name and it doesn't matter, but I was like, man, that person's got a pretty high rank, but there definitely is no stripe white belt in character.
Yeah.
And that's just like the way they kind of would present themselves on and off the mat.
Yeah, and that's tough, and that's where that ego thing can carry over from work and other things. And if you go to a place where, they haven't had a mentor that's told them to reflect on that and try to be a better person. Like I can't tell you how many times, like I've like especially on the MMA side, fighters will post something about their fight that it just pisses me off, and I'm like, why are you posting that? What does that represent? Do you understand how this post represents you or this thing that you're messaging? And it represents the gym and like what we're trying to do. I'm like, take that shit down. You know what I mean? That's not what we're trying to represent here. That's not who we're trying to be. And that hopefully in the end makes them, better people, and they start thinking about what they're doing and, how they're projecting themselves out there. But yeah, not everybody has a mentor that's going to come in and tell them that. They're just going to kind of let them do whatever they want because they don't really, it comes down to, they actually care about that person and care about that person's development, or do they just want their money and them to be good at the physical aspect of it, but not, grow on the, personal side.
Yeah, I think we've all seen that. Everyone that's trained under you, just the way you carry yourself, and you're just as respectful to the other coaches and the other fighters and everyone competing.
Yeah, that's what the goal is. So I'm glad everybody sees it. That's kind of what we're striving for. So.
Yeah, that was one other thing I wanted to ask you. I don't know how much you thought about this, but I think about this, like your kind of the environment in your gym, and that culture, like I don't think is like can be replicated anywhere. And I like don't know how much thought you put into that, or it's just
yeah. So it's very unique, and I can't tell you how many people leave or move, and they're like, man, like there's nothing like that gym was. There's no environment or energy or, there's just nothing like it. And I think, one of the things that we do is like is having enough freedom, giving students enough freedom to like be themselves, but then also trying to, understand that we're trying to be good people, and then that's just been carrying on for so long. And then we have, other good coaches that have that. Yeah, it does stem from like me. I don't want to like, I let people from, if you have, anybody can come train at the gym. It doesn't matter what affiliation you're from. It doesn't matter where you've been or who you are. The gym's open for everyone. So we don't do a bunch of stuff where like, some gyms will be like, you have to wear this gi. You can only train with us, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, I don't want that. I want everyone to be able to be friends. I've learned a lot from Steve Lieberman, who worked with a lot of the Easton gyms in Colorado when we moved up here. So as far as like, things they would work on with their gyms. And one of them he would always say is like, your gym should be like Cheers, where everybody knows your name. You know what I mean? Where you're coming in and everybody knows each other and it's fun and all that. And just trying to keep it positive on all the stuff. And like, if there's any negative stuff that goes on, I just like bury it inside myself so nobody else has to deal with it.
Sounds healthy.
Yeah, super healthy. Don't worry, I'm sparring tonight. It'll all be good. Anyway, so yeah, just doing all that stuff, but just, keeping a good environment, keeping it happy for the kids and like helping the adults grow. And then, you always get people that aren't a fit in the gym and like, they just kind of weed themselves out. They just kind of quit going on their own. So I've only had to ask one person to leave the gym ever, which sucked. But they had gotten in a altercation, which they started, which was their fault, which was inappropriate. And, they refused to apologize about it, even though they were, definitely not in the right about it. And so it sucked because somebody I really liked, but I was like, dude, like, sorry, man. I guess there would be 2 people too. So there'd be another situation with another person that I was trying to help with a lot of personal demons and had some things going on and, had some political views that were just not healthy for the gym necessarily. And that was a really tough one too, because I was really trying to help that person for a long time. And I was like, unless those political views change, where the gym's at right now, like it's just not a place for how you're expressing yourself. So, which really sucked. That hurt. I've tried to help a lot of people over the years, and there's, other stories where sometimes you'll be able to help people and get them better and happy. And then people that you've tried and like, you're like, oh man, there's a point where it's like, okay, when do I let go of trying to help this person? I've definitely tried to help people for too long at the detriment of the gym in the past. So some of the past stuff that I've been through has helped get to the gym where it is now, where there's like, I've learned a lot of lessons. Like I've tried to help people at the gym that other people wouldn't come train at the gym because that person was there and their reputation was so bad, even though I was just trying to be that kind of Mr. Miyagi where I'm going to try to turn this person around and have this story. And it's like, man, I got to be super careful with that, and how I do that. But yeah, so anyway.
Probably so interesting. It happens, I think, in all sports, but I would imagine it happens to an even more acute level with like a fighting sport. But like everything that you're having problems with or challenges or you might be upset with, I feel like it kind of comes out in sports, right? People use it they use sports as a relief valve for other things in life, right? If something's not going well at work, you can kind of run it off in your sport, whatever. Or fight it off, right? And so there are things that are inappropriate that could come out at the gym that people, if they don't notice that they're angry because of something else, they take it out on somebody at the gym, and you're like, no, hey man, we're not doing that here.
Yeah, we're super careful with it and trying to be careful with conversations people are having at the gym and trying to protect our students. I'm trying to do a good job of making sure that people just can't come in and start rolling hard right away and hurt somebody that's been there for a long time, or training with the women and being careful with that. I mean, I don't think there's very much. There's only one thing that is more intimate than jiu-jitsu or martial arts training with full contact stuff where someone can really hurt you, and that's actual intimacy, right? With jiu-jitsu, I have to trust that if you're going to attack a submission on me, that you're not going to blow my arm out if it gets close, that you're not just going to rip my arm out. I have to have that amount of trust in you. And I have to have enough trust in that, or in sparring, if I'm trying a new technique and I'm working on something and I make a mistake, which is going to happen when I'm working something new, that my consequences aren't going to be dire because you're a good teammate and I'm not going to get injured because I'm going for this move. It's very difficult. So, understanding those things, that we try to, get people training at the right level at the right time and trying to keep people from not being spazzy. And, if people are getting upset with you when you grapple, and you should know that, are people wanting to roll with you? Are people hesitant about rolling with you? And it's are you trying to just win? If people don't want to train with you and you're the guy sitting in the corner and no one's coming up to be your partner, you might need to reflect on how you train and how you're rolling with different people. We have guys at the gym that people will always go to roll with, whether their size, strength, whatever. They're all right, this guy's going to be chill. And then or if you're a competitive person, oh yeah, this guy's going to roll hard with me now. That's what I need. And they can jump back and forth. And that's important. So
it's funny because it's an individual sport, but it's a team sport too.
Yeah. Have you grappled with Tim yet?
I wouldn't say we've grappled. No.
Yeah, you just did a few.
Yeah, just drilled a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Have you choked him out for real yet?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
I think I need you or kicked you in the face on accident. Gave him a black eye.
That's what I'm saying. Those are the things that happen.
I gave him a black eye within 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, fuck, my bad, dude.
Yeah, people are flailing all over. So, no, we do a good job of keeping the good energy. And I also want to say that, part of that is figuring out, we've got a lot of good people that go there, coaches that help. And there's so many, Justin and Natalie have been a big part of the gym for years, and all the kids coaches, there's so many, and just good people have come to the gym and like the energy there and keep training. And, the people that help with kids coaches, and picking the right people to help coach is important, I think, because there's been people that come through that are higher level guys. And I'm just and that's another thing, Steve Lieberman, back in the day would say, it'd be hey, we've got purple belts that teach classes instead of black belts, because the purple belt is more personable and people like them more.
Yeah. And
they just have more fun in those classes. And so that's super important also, to be okay, who's good and why? And I'm trying to do a better job all around of helping train the coaches and train the kids coaches. It's so hard because there's so many people and it's always changing, but that's my goals right now, is I want to be a better, do better at coaching, or giving my coaches the information they need to coach themselves to become better coaches. That's kind of my goal for the next year. And everybody still does a great job, but I feel I need to do better with that myself because we're getting so busy. But yeah, it's a great atmosphere and energy. And I think we do weed out. So like, I won't let somebody roll or spar for quite some time. Because it weeds out those people that are in too big a hurry, that are going to hurt people, that are there for themselves, that are not there for the long run, because you want to get better over a long period of time. You could get better really fast, especially if you're studying on your own and stuff like that. But if your goal is so focused on, you and not being able to be patient and not being coachable, those people just don't join the gym. Cause I'm like, hey, you get a free month of classes or whatever, but you're not going to be able to roll. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do this. And it's like, a lot of times that conversation, they'll either quit right then. They'll be like, oh, I don't get to punch somebody tomorrow. Okay. And I'm like, oh, well, you're not the best person for this gym anyway, if that's what you need. Like there's other gyms that'll let you go and do that right away. Like go ahead and go over there if that's the fit for you. But I want someone that can be patient and be coachable and all that stuff. Cause then I know they're going to train safe, roll safe, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, kind of go from there.
Yeah. A friend of mine, she got interested in jiu-jitsu just from me talking about it. And she went and started training where she lives in the second class. She's full rolling. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And with who?
Yeah. She's like a 5-foot tall girl. So
yeah. And so she just full rolling with guys she doesn't know.
Yeah. It was like
dude, that's crazy, man. You know what I mean? And it's like, and some gyms are like that, but it's like, I know you're taking like our women jiu-jitsu program has gotten big for a couple of reasons. One, we're really keeping them safe. We got some women's only classes that are being led by women right now. Natalie and May and some of the ladies are running those, and a lot of, so it makes it easier because more women come in and they have women to train with. And like, I've been telling the new women, I'm like, you don't grapple with any male that's not at least a blue belt. You don't have to grapple with anybody you don't want to grapple with. Like once you're approved for rolling, if you see a brand new white belt guy and he's trying to grapple with you, no, like we shouldn't be doing that unless you're like, oh, he's friends from school, I know him or whatever. Right. And like, just trying to keep people safe. But yeah, that's crazy, man. Like,
I know, like depending on the size and strength of some white belts, I don't like grappling with. Because I'm like, this is a liability because this guy's going to go full retard on me. and I got to like try to keep this 250-pound guy from like just jumping on my leg or jumping on anything. And
yeah, just going. And that's why we got like, and so we're trying to get a really good vocabulary for what flow rolling is so everybody understands it.
I was trying to find a better word with my vocabulary there, but
yeah, you didn't find
I was trying to think of one too after you said that. Just full spaz, man. Like, I don't know. Can't go full Lenny.
Anyway, yeah, just from like top to bottom, there's like a culture and an energy there that's like just no one can put their finger on what it is, but you feel it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, and everybody's doing well at tournaments. I mean, we've been doing really well as a team. When we bring a team to tournaments, like we often will take first place in that tournament as our team in adult points. And last year, for about a year and a half, we were ranked in, number 1 no-gi for grappling industries, like in the US, which is legit. And I was like number 3 in the world. And I don't like.
Wait, say that again.
So we were ranked number 3 in the world for grappling industries, which is one of the bigger grappling tournaments out there. We were, as far as points go, for no-gi grappling, we were ranked third in the world, like third in the world for this tournament. And it's there's not many worldwide tournaments either. So that's the other thing. Like there's nowhere else where you're going to see, like other than IBJJF, I don't think there's anything else that's worldwide. Right. So for like a year and a half, we were ranked like number 3 and then, and number 1 in the US for no-gi for points, for grappling industries, which is a huge accomplishment. I didn't even know it. We just looked it up.
How is that possible?
Somebody had to tell me.
How is that possible? And I'm not questioning you. I'm more of like in trying to understand, like, how is that possible for a smaller town in Montana, like compared to all these big cities across the country? That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. And part of it is because like those are the tournaments that are here. So those are the ones we go to. We don't. So some of those other schools, they'll go to more different tournaments because they're available. But the closest ones for us, like we really only go to grappling industries and sometimes the Impact because there is nothing else around us. So that helps. So all of our tournaments, all the stuff we go to is always grappling industries. So that would be one thing that helps. But also I really try to encourage people to compete. And we have a lot of college kids that come through here that want to compete. So it's not like we don't have a bunch of like, we do have 40-year-olds that join obviously, but not a lot compared to like how many college kids we have come in that are hungry, that want to try and want to give it a go. So, and then we kind of build up from there. And
There'll be some big crews that go to some of the tournaments.
Yeah, man. The AM group, it's kind of weird. There's all these little subset groups in the gym in our community because like everybody trains at different times with different people and different age groups. It's kind of weird how it's skewed. But like the AM guys are a bunch of the dads that have kids, and that's the time for them to train. And so like they'll try to go to a tournament as a group, and then we'll try to send more people there. And then you've got like, the strikers that just do that, people that just do bags class, and you got the MMA group, and then you got the guys that do, jiu-jitsu during the day, and you got different guys that do jiu-jitsu at night. And it's like a bunch of different stuff. But yeah, I mean, I was just really, there was, for a period where like we were just going and doing really well. And I think part of that's the kind of curriculum we put together as far as like, okay, like, making sure our coaches are all on the same page as far as what we're teaching and how classes are being run. And then just keeping it positive, as we go to that. But I don't even know where we're at right now. I didn't even check recently because we haven't been doing as many tournaments as we were. There was just a cycle like post-COVID for like 2020 where we're just like, we just tournaments 2 or 3 years and lots of good guys coming through and getting good, like, Tim and Colin and Zach and Tyne and all these other people. And like the MMA guys were doing a little bit more jiu-jitsu at that time too. And like, cause we had, Nate and Alex and Tyler and like, dude, we had some really good guys for a while. And like people end up moving and it becomes like different groups. But there was a time where like we had a solid competitive group. Like, and unfortunately not everybody can stay and then people move and go on to other things. But man, there was a time where it was like, man, we got some studs right now. And like, they just all make each other better. So that's why we kind of got up to that point.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back up. One more thing. I was still thinking about the culture, Ty Todd's wedding.
Oh yeah.
A girl I'm now dating, I wasn't dating her that long, and naturally, Ty let me know I was invited to his wedding like 2 days before it.
Yeah.
I could bring a date, so I brought her, and she like couldn't believe it, and I couldn't either. There was just like, what was there? Like, how many guys from the gym do you think?
Dude, there was so many. That's an amazing photo.
Yeah, there was like 50 guys from the gym, and she's like, "Oh, are you gonna know anyone at this wedding?" I'm like, "Yeah, like everyone."
Yeah,
everyone's a giant family here.
Yeah, it was
pretty
cool.
You got up and spoke there too. That was
yeah, that was cool. That was a good wedding. Lots of people there. Everybody kind of knew everybody and close enough for everybody to go. So it was good. Lots of people from the gym. Yeah, lots of family. So like I said there, like I think like I look at like all my coaches as my kids. Like I don't have kids myself, but like because I've been running the gym and like doing that, and it's like, okay, well, like all these people are my kids, and I treat them like how I think I would treat them if I was their actual parent and mentor or uncle or whatever, and just be like, all right, this is what you should be doing, and let's try to do the best for everybody. So
yeah, I think a lot of those guys and girls look up to you as a role model and an influence, myself included. Is there anyone that you think? I know you mentioned one guy's name, but is there like certain people you think of that were just big, good role models or influences for you throughout your?
Man, lots of different people like have, I've learned things from a lot of different people over the years. Like I remember like when I was at the YMCA, I had my boss name was Rusty, and I want to say the last name was Barnes. I can't remember at this point, but it was like, he was the greatest boss. Like we'd be working. He's like, all right, we're going to go play basketball at noon ball for an hour. I'm like, okay. He's like, let's stay on the clock. We're like, whoa, let's go that. He was an awesome, mentor for coaching. I even remember when I was in college and I had graduated, he called me right away and was like, you want to come work for me? Like, and he was in like Tennessee or Arizona or something. I'm like, oh no, I'm trying to do this. So like, it's pretty cool. But so, a lot of good times with him, all that, good basketball coaches throughout the year helped me with some of that stuff. As far as like, we had David Shearer, who was one of my instructors when I was in film school. He was a good mentor for like the film stuff and all that. And like I said, got in a couple film festivals and things with that. Just hard to pursue staying in Montana. Obviously, Grandmaster Flavio, lots of talks with him on running and teaching and being a responsible instructor. And then just having a vision of who I wanted to be as a coach and as a person. And, coming back to that empathy thing, like I'm very empathetic towards people and situations and stuff like that. And I don't know where that came from necessarily. I remember times in my life where there's things that I would go back and change where you're just like, man, why did I act like that as a kid? Like I remember specifically one where I had a really good friend that I was friends with in grade school, and then I was in middle school, and then like you're in middle school, and that's when all this like different subgroups are starting, whether it's like, jocks, computer nerds, blah, 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 whatever this. And like, that's kind of in between like a couple groups, and one group like trying to push me out of another group. And like, I just kind of let that happen. And I kind of regret that, because I had some really good friends in like this other group, and I had good friends in the other group too. But I was like, man, why was I at a point where like I had to like choose a side? And like, so that was one thing I'd be like very empathetic about. And I just always had like that feeling for other people when like, something was going bad in their life. I'd be like, oh man, that sucks. Like, how can I make it better? And then just kind of never wanting to make people feel bad, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of one of those things. So let's get that going. But anyway, so I always had that idea of that. And then I would just kind of, like you, if you're reading a lot of Carl Jung, and you're just like, okay, this is somebody that, I like some of these quotes and somebody I look up to. And then I think you take bits and pieces from everybody that you're with. Like, in theory, even here, as we sit here, well, I definitely know if you're touching somebody, right? Like your, cells and everything else, like combined, like you just hold somebody's hands, like everything is like intertwined. So in life, like you're learning things from everybody, every teacher, every experience. And just like however I ended up, how I ended up was based on like all my experiences, all my teachers, everybody through my whole life up until this point, and every conversation you have and how you learn, and all those things are all part of it. So, so not specifically one person, but yeah, again, tons of people that we have learned from the years. But for like the martial arts teaching side of it, like Grandmaster Flavio, because he was already older and been through, a bunch of the bullshit, I'm sure, in his life from teaching and seeing everything that's happened in Brazil with Jiu-Jitsu, and having all that experience where he can just be like, hey, this is based on my, his at that time, 40 years of experience plus or whatever, maybe even more. It's like, this is what I've experienced, and he's able to pass that on, so you don't have to deal with as much stuff. But now there's a lot of information out there to learn from whoever you can, and just got to try to find those positive voices to listen to, for sure.
I see. I didn't hear you say this, but I heard you quoted from, you said it to one of my good friends, something like, the only thing you ever own at the end of the day is your reputation.
Yeah, man. Yep.
I think he was asking you like what properties you owned or something. And that was
that's what I said.
That was your Bryan Deats response to him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the truth, man. Like, there's a thing, people, you've probably heard this one too, where people won't remember your name necessarily, but they will remember how you made them feel. Right? Like, people remember how you interacted with them. So even if they don't remember your name and they see you, they're going to be like, oh, was this a kind person? Was this an angry person? How did they make me feel? Did they listen to me? Did they respect me? We have a lot of, unfortunate people that have unfortunate home situations that will walk into the gym, and I always kind of like shake their hand and talk to them. And I think it's just, give them a little bit of respect at that time. And even though it's like, okay, well, we might have kids classes going on or whatever. And I'm like, all right, well, we got kids right now. You can't be in the gym, but if you're going to sign up, this is how it works and all that. So I try to show everybody a little bit of respect with that also. But yeah, your reputation is important. Like that's going to be the thing you go away with, man, is like, how are people going to remember you? If you're lucky enough to have enough money to leave a legacy to where you're, you can create a foundation or something that's like, doing something positive for the world, even after you die, that would be great. Obviously I don't have that kind of money, but if I won $500 million, I always kind of think about like, what would I do? You guys play the lottery when it gets $1 billion?
I haven't played the lottery.
It's pretty high right now.
Mega Millions at 670 million right now. So I'm always like, if I won like the money, like what would I do with it? I would be good. It's like, could I create like nonprofits that are self-sustaining where they actually make money also, but then they're still doing like good for the community? Like, what are you going to leave? You know what I mean? Like, so hopefully I leave pieces of myself and pieces of the positive parts of me with all my students and all the kids and everybody at the gym and everybody I interact with. So maybe those little pieces, are the pebbles in the pond that kind of create the waves in the end. That's what I try to hope for.
Yeah, you've definitely created like a first or second home for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So hopefully that's what it needs to be. So hopefully, like, one day when I can't teach or whatever it is that happens, that alien robot invasion, then everybody can keep on going.
Yeah, I mean, as disgusting as MMA and Jiu-Jitsu gyms are, you walk in and the smell hits me and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm home.
Yeah. Trying to get that smell out of the gym, Tim.
Yeah. Fungus. I smell fungus. I know I'm home.
We bought the gym's different days. It just depends upon how many people are in there and all that. It's got like a varying smells, but yeah, it's good. It'll be nice too once we get updates. I'm gonna try to build an outdoor training area. I don't know if that'll be done this summer. I'm going to focus on the other mat area first, but I want to train outside in the summer. That's what I want. I want to be outside more in the summer. And if part of that's like coaching outside, I want to try to make that happen.
We should talk to Bryan or one of those engineers and look at it about putting like garage doors on the walls there. That'd be so nice to just open that place up and have free flowing air through there in the summer.
Well, we have that one garage door in the back room.
The cage room.
Yeah, but dude, it'd be so dirty. There'd be so much dust.
Yeah, especially with the road right there.
Yeah, and just the wind. Otherwise, it would be great. But if we have the outdoor training area, it'll be cool. I think, I got to figure something out because the plan is to be able to open that up so that mat area just goes into the outdoor area. So I don't know if we need to get like a net or something to keep bugs and stuff out. So it's just like a little, like a tent net or something that people come in and out of. But it'll be nice once it's done. I mean, there'll be 3 months of the year where it's absolutely gorgeous to train outside, a couple where it's going to be too hot. But man, some of those evenings in like September and August, like to be outside and like rolling out with the sunset going down, and it's like 70 degrees or whatever, depending on what the temperature is, that'll be sweet.
Yeah, that's on the right side too, so you won't be in the blistering sun when it's July and August.
Yeah, it'll be good. Looking forward to that. Yeah. That going.
Cool.
So Kyle, where do you eat chicken wings at in town?
Oh, here we go. I don't really eat a lot of chicken wings. I'm not like a chicken wing connoisseur.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I like them, but like I'm not like it's not like my thing,
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Tell us about your chicken wing business.
Man, that's a whole nother story, man. Yeah. So I started. So where we grew up in Casper, there was a guy there that had bought the original buffalo recipe from one of the places in New York. So there's a few, whether it's Duff's or whether it's the Anchor Bar, wherever you think that wing sauce actually came from. That's up for debate. But he bought one of the original recipes, and like we would eat there all the time as kids, man. Like, because back then wings were like super cheap too. It's not like now wings are the most expensive part of the chicken. Like there's places for a while that had to do market price on wings because like there were shortages and stuff. But anyway, so he had original recipe, used to eat wings a lot. And when I went to college, there really couldn't find any great wings here. So for like literally like one of my hobbies on the weekends would be like trying to make good wing sauce and like trying to figure out how to like make good chicken wings. So did that for like 3 or 4 years and came up with a good recipe. And then, always thought about going to like wing competitions and wing festivals. I just never really done it yet. And then like one year I'm just like, you know what, I'm just going to go do this wing festival in Reno, see what happens. And one of the things you had to do is you had to make your product on site for the health department. So I'm like, okay, I've got to mix this sauce on site. How am I going to make that and do that efficiently? So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to bag it, all the spices, and then I'll mix in my liquid ingredients, which would be like my melted butter and the Frank's Red Hot. And so then I just had a bag, dump it in, dump in a gallon of this and this just to make it quick. And then I was like, oh, well, that's how I could sell it to restaurants also, is like having it in bags, and I just sell them the spices. They're already pre-made. No one has to do any measurements. And then it's just like my recipes. And so when did the first festival, and we won an award there. It was our first year. And I didn't know anything about wing festivals or how to approach them. And like in my mind, because I'm a wing fanatic, I would go to every single wing booth and try every wing and every sauce. So I just thought everybody that comes to this festival is going to try wings at every one. But most people had their places they wanted to go to, and they put us next to the most popular booth, which was like this guy called, he did a barbecue sauce, and his barbecue sauce was called Having an Affair, because it was like something like he started the company after he got divorced from his wife because he had an affair with somebody else. Anyway, they were killing it, man. They sold so much. Their line was busy the whole time, and we're just sitting next to them, just like we're getting crushed. I mean, there's like 30, 40 vendors there. But lots of people were coming by trying stuff. So like towards the end, we just told people like, hey, come try the sauce. Like, you don't have to buy the chicken. Come try the sauce for free. And so people taste it and be like, oh yeah, this is really good. And it's like, yeah. And it's like, just because we didn't have a line didn't mean it was good. So then we ended up, that one, we won an award. There was a Yelp award that they sent us some secret people through to judge all the wings. And so we won best wings from them. So after we won that, then people started coming to our booth that day. And then and then we also started doing more sauces. So when I first went there, I only did one sauce, but most places had like 8 sauces or like just a ton of selection. So every year I would do a few more sauces, and we just kept winning awards and winning more awards. And then I started like selling it to some local restaurants in Bozeman. And then I got into a food service and started selling it to other restaurants in Montana. And now we just kind of sell it all around the country. We don't sell a ton. It's still just definitely a side hustle. But we just got on Princess Cruise Lines, so that's cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. So 2 ships. We'll see how it works. I mean, it's going to have to work out for them, and the chefs are going to have to like it, So they've just done their first orders, but that's good. And yeah, so we're just trying to get it out there. And so yeah, I just love wing sauces and, the creativity that people have with them at different restaurants when they actually try. And, so we got a bunch of different sauces.
What's the sauce called?
So the company is Wingredient is the company. But we have like our flagship, which is like our sweet and tangy. We have like a buffalo ranch, a buffalo parmesan, a chipotle mesquite,
Can you buy it online?
Ginger. Yeah, wingredient.com has it. If people want to order like for, we have like a package for like home use. So you can get them online there. And then mostly we do restaurants, but restaurants can buy their stuff on there also. And we send out free samples to restaurants, but it's
how many flavors you got?
15.
Oh, wow.
And
dude,
then,
you got a lot.
Yeah. And then there's like all these combo flavors you can do. So actually that's what I'm working on right now is like my next like big email out to all my clients is going to be like, okay, you mix these 2 products together to create this flavor or whatever, if they're trying to get very unique with it. But
what's your favorite, or what's the best seller?
The best sellers. So the garlic parmesan, the regular house buffalo, and the sweet and tangy, the flagship ones. Those are definitely the best sellers. I jump around and do different ones. So you can do different oils in them to make them however healthy you want. But I've been doing the chipotle mesquite with an avocado oil instead of a butter. That's pretty legit. So I just changed because I've had them all for so long.
Can you handle like super, super hot stuff or no?
I used to. I don't do it anymore. I just don't need the repercussions of it. Like it's fun. Like when you're like, we used to do that like in college when we were doing it. Let's make this as hot as we can and like get the endorphin rush from it and all that stuff. And it's fun for a little bit, but man, the next day is terrible.
Okay, I got
like,
you.
You know what I mean? It's like I just don't need the heartburn and the other burn and all that stuff with it. But
I can't handle the heat, man.
Yeah, and sometimes some people can. It's culturally too. Like when we go to the wing festival, some people like our hottest stuff that we'd make wouldn't be hot enough. So I would start making like this crazy hot stuff where I would just put like the hottest things I could find in it, like ghost pepper, Carolina Reaper, and there would be literally half of it would be these hot spicy sauces with just a little bit of liquid. And man, it was crazy. People would still be like, it's not hot enough. It's like, all right, I don't know what I'm going to do. But a new one, if you don't like hot stuff, we have an Alabama barbecue now, which is really legit. So that we've been using that a lot, which is like a white barbecue sauce. So it's pretty legit.
What restaurants are they in around here? Who's using it?
Yeah, so Burger Bob's has a couple. Free Fall Brewery has a couple. The Cat's Paw has 2. What used to be Brewskers, which is now the Hideaway Grill, they carry the most of the sauces. I think they have 4 or 5. And then the Tap Room has them also. And then so we got it out and about. I try not to go to too many places because then it'd just be like too much in one town. But yeah, we kind of got them all over. And so it's good.
Cool.
See, a lot of people I talk to say Hideaway is the best wings.
Yeah, which is good because they, Hideaway is one of the last like small college. So back in the 90s, like when Bozeman had all these like small college restaurants because they could afford to be here, it was awesome. Like Hideaway reminds me, is the Taco Monte still there?
I think so.
I think
yeah.
it's still there.
Yeah. So that type of like small college, frame restaurant, like if you go to a college area in any big city and there's all these like cool little restaurants, like the Hideaway is one of the last ones, man. Just a little grill shop that tries to do really well with their food and brings in the best thing they can, the best sauces they can. And it's not like corporate and like trying to survive. Like we don't like all these restaurants that open now have to be high end fancy. They can't be like just a good little thing like that. Like even like,
because the rent's so high.
Yeah. What's the Mac truck called? Mac Bowls. What is it?
Oh, I know what you're talking about. What the hell is that?
Anyway,
they're like the mac and cheese bowls.
Yeah, so their trucks survived, but they had a hard time with their brick and mortar. And like their brick and mortar food was good. Like I went there, they had a couple good bowls that aren't on their Mac truck that were decent, and they were trying to put out good product. But like I think they might have had a COVID thing too around then that made it hard. But like, man, it's hard for those little restaurants to make it in this town, which sucks. So that's what's good about there. And then they're not like they're attached to a bar, but they don't make money from the bar. So like they're really focused on their food, which is really good. And, all the other places do a good job too, but they have, just have that little bit different feel, I guess.
I went to a place won't say the name, but I got a dozen wings and it was $36. I was pretty bummed about that.
Dude, it's crazy right now.
I was like, that's like,
wings are about $2 a wing or more. So, because people are always asking me, like, when I talk to these clients, we'll go to a bunch of wing shows and trade shows and stuff to sell products, which are crazy. Like, they're so big. Like, when I started going to like these shows in Vegas to like try to get my wing sauce out there, dude, they're the bar and restaurant show and like the Pizza Expo. It's like unbelievable how big they are and how much money are in these industries until you like actually see it. But yeah, wings are expensive right now. And people still buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's $3 a wing. That's a lot.
This was probably 10 years ago. Me and my buddy used to go to place on Monday night wing nights, and they're 50 cents a wing.
Yep.
We'd kill at least 18 wings, if not more.
Yeah. They used to be the cheapest, and because they used to throw them away, and then bars started to figure out that they could make appetizers with them, and then they just got popular because I think it's because it's like an animalistic thing to eat. Because it's like this little piece of bone. It's like you're eating like you were when you were a caveman, and there's some feral kind of thing when you eat a chicken wing. It's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like raw. It's like just eating. Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that's what where the appeal is of some of it. But I also think like the skin to fat ratio and meat ratio is a big part of it too. As far as like, you know, all the things when you eat a chicken wing, even without the sauce, like all the pieces that your brain is getting, you know, for whatever dopamine stuff it causes is pretty high. So I think people like that, and they just, I don't know.
What's your favorite way to cook them at home?
I air fry them now, because that's just the healthier way to do it. So, I know I haven't tried cooking them in a beef towel yet. Have you guys done that?
No.
So I guess the Buffalo Wild Wings here now is actually frying all their wings in beef towel. They're not using oils. They're not using seed oils anymore. So I haven't done that, but I bought bacon grease from the grocery store the other day, and I was like, I'm going to fry some wings in bacon grease and see what that's like.
That's a good idea.
Nice.
Yeah.
Probably most important question. How do you feel about boneless wings?
Did you ever see the video of that guy?
No.
The court case guy?
No.
Really? Okay, so I'm not even going to say what I feel, but there's this guy that went to court in his county or whatever to try to get the name of boneless wings changed. It's a good video to watch.
So what did you want to get?
You just got to watch it.
Okay.
I don't want to take away from the guy's legend. It's a legendary thing that he did.
All right.
I didn't even know about that, but I just have the discussion amongst people that will.
Yeah, they're not
be so shameless as to order boneless chicken wings.
I will shame you if you order boneless wings.
Yeah, me too. That's why we have the discussion.
I will definitely shame you, but it's okay. So
it's like a chicken nugget.
It is just a chicken nugget.
Yeah.
But I mean, but right now, what are you going to do as a restaurant? Like, it's cheaper. Like, if I were to tell someone to start a restaurant, I'm like, yeah, you have to do boneless. You have to do, and also chicken tenders are cheaper than boneless wings, like price per ounce, right? So you still got to make your money.
You're saying from a business perspective,
yeah, we sell them. It's hard, like I was even considering like, if we do a festival again where we're trying to make money selling stuff, was doing like small drums and just calling it like hot chicken legs or something instead of doing hot wings, because it's just like, I'm paying $6 a pound for wings and $2 a pound for drumsticks. You know what I mean? And so financially, you got to figure it out. But anyway, as far as wings, like I'm a connoisseur. Flats, for sure. Flats over drums. You always got to get your wings cooked extra crispy, and you're always going to have to ask for extra sauce because there's never going to be enough. So that's what you're going to do when you order your wings. What I do, and people that have been to places with me where I haven't been before, I go there, I order a side of every single sauce. I taste all the sauces first. And
without a wing,
without
like a finger or a spoon or something.
Yeah, I'll order every sauce on the side. I taste every single sauce, and it can get expensive because I'll go to places that have 100 flavors. I'll order every one of them, and I'll pay $100 for the sides of every single sauce, and I will taste every sauce, and then I'll know which ones I want.
You'll be there for like 3 weeks.
I wouldn't take that long.
I don't know. I'm just messing around.
Some of it kind of gets similar, but anyway. Yeah, and then you can figure out which wings you want, and then you know which sauce you want. Because if it's just Frank's Red Hot, I'm not going to get it. Like everyone, like we're lazy. If they're lazy in the kitchen, maybe they're not lazy in the kitchen, but they're like, people still buy Frank's Red Hot, so maybe it's not wrong. People buy things they shouldn't buy that I think they shouldn't buy. So, if it's straight Frank's, I'm not into that. That's what everybody else has. Like, I want to go to a place that's doing a unique sauce, that's trying to do something different. And if they buy our product, they can at least customize it. They can use a different type of oil. They can add other ingredients to it. Like with our garlic Parmesan, one of the guys in New Jersey, like he adds like fresh garlic Parmesan after it's made and roasted garlic in there as addition to what's in there already, so we can like use it as a base to start things, which is cool. But that's usually the best way to get the wings. And the place in town that had the best wings isn't open anymore, other than mine. So I would still say that mine are the best ones in town, the places that carry them. But the garage had really good wings for a while before they had to shut down. Like theirs were legit.
The garage isn't there anymore?
No, didn't make it. It was a hard location, man.
But they moved out to...
Yeah, it's not there. They had to shut down. That's a tough location, man.
A couple businesses have shut down.
Yeah, the salad place was out there that had to leave, and then they had that good sandwich place out there.
Cold Smoke Coffee's gone too.
Yeah. Well, there was good places out there. The Knife restaurant, like I really liked that place. The salad place was okay. My wife really liked it, so we'd go there a lot. But then they didn't make it. And then that's what I'm saying. Like those type of places, like to still have one, like, you know, man, it's crazy. So good to go back to that. But yeah, any of the places in town do a good job. So, but some people have breaded, some people have non-breaded. And then how they cook their chicken and the size of their chicken is different at every place. I have no control of that. You know, everybody's is different, like which wing product and chicken product they bring in. So it's unique, even if they have the same sauce on it. But it's a fun little side project.
Nice.
Pays for some trips to Vegas. We'll go to those food shows and it's all a write-off. So it's like, okay.
Sure. Yeah.
That's cool as well. So
nice.
Hell yeah. I think that's all I got. Kyle, you got anything else?
No. Let's wrap it up.
Sweet. Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Coach Bryan Deats. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.